theyeshiva.net.
The second paragraph on Mem Daled Amud Beis, page 87, Ubechol Hanal Yuvon. Ubechol Haniskeleel, Ubechol Hanal, with everything that's been discussed, Yuvon v'Yivur will understand, will be understood, and will be explained, Mashakosov b'Likutei Hashas me'Harizal. A passage from a sefer called Likutei Hashas by the Arizal. The Arizal, Rosh Tevis Arizal, is Adonenu Rabbeinu Yitzchak Zechroinu Livracha. The Arizal's name was Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbeinu Yitzchak Luria. That's why his Kabbalah, they call it Lurianic Kabbalah, because his name was Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. And he's known as the Arizal, Adonenu Rabbeinu Yitzchak Zechroinu Livracha. His last name was Rabbi Yitzchak Luria Ashkenazi. Now, the Arizal has many svarim, transcribed by his students, primarily Reb Chaim Vitala. One of them is called Likutei Hashas. Likutei Hashas are short explanations on various pieces of various Gemaras. Like the derech of the Arizal, most of it is pure Kabbalah, an extremely abstract, Kabbalistic, and enigmatic language. In Likutei Hashas on Arizal, in Masechta Sanhedrin, there's a story in the Gemara that he's going to discuss now, this story, and the Arizal has a passage. When you read the passage of the Arizal, though, it's extremely cryptic. That's what he says. Based on all of this, we'll be able to understand what the Arizal says in that passage. For this, we have to know what the Gemara is. So he starts off. Explaining the Chazal, the statement of our sages in Chelik. Chelik, of course, is the 11th chapter of Masechta Sanhedrin, called Perek Chelik, because it begins with the Mishnah, Kol Yisrael Yesh Lahem Chelik Lo'olam Haba. It's called Perek Chelik, and this Gemara happens to be Sanhedrin of Kuf Beis Amud Aleph, Soif Amud Aleph. Shetafsei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yeravam ben Nevat. Let me read the whole Gemara, because here he assumes that everybody knows the Gemara, so he doesn't get into all the details. So I'm going to read to you the Gemara. For this, you have to remember the story I mentioned. After Shlomo HaMelech, the first king of Malchi Yehudah is David, who takes over after Shaul. Shaul loses his kingship. Shaul comes from Binyamin. David becomes the king, and when he passes away, Shlomo takes over. Shlomo passes away, Yeravam takes over. This was a unified kingdom. Shlomo HaMelech united all of the Jewish people. He expanded Eretz Yisrael significantly, and he made tremendous alliances with many of the leaders of his day. As the Tanakh describes, that Shlomo was an extraordinary leader, to the point that he was named Shlomo because Shalom Yiyeh B'Yama was a time of peace and prosperity. And it was a unique moment of Jewish history. The Tanakh says, Ish tachas gafne v'tachas teinosai. Everybody under his vine and under his fig tree. As Medrash says, Kaim Sira Bashlamusa. In Shlomo's days, the moon is complete. It's the 15th day of the month, symbolically, in the sense that the Jewish people, compared to the moon, are in a very, relatively speaking, an extremely wholesome state. And he builds the Beis HaMikdash. He's the first man who creates the epicenter for the Shechina in the midst of earth. He has a place for God, a place for the Aron, a place of Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Mokem Asher Yivcher Hashem L'Shaken Shmoi Sham, that was always in transient. It was always in transition. Finally, Zois Menuchasi Adeyat Poi Eshev Ki Yivisi, the whole capital in Tehillim. David HaMelech made a shvu. I'm not going to go to sleep till I find a place, and Shlomo HaMelech is the one who gets it done. So it's a unique moment in Jewish history, to the point the Gemara says that when Shlomo HaMelech built the first Beis HaMikdash and he dedicated it, it was the only time, first and last time in Jewish history, that they ate on Yom Kippur. They ate on Yom Kippur. He felt that the Simcha deserves to transcend and suspend the halachas of Yom Kippur in terms of eating and drinking. It was one Yom Kippur that they ate. Now, what happens is, Shlomo passes away, Rechavam takes over. As the Tanakh describes in detail, there was a delegation that came to Rechavam and asked him to ease the taxes and generally change the MO of Shlomo. Instead of surrendering and accepting their offer and working with them, Rechavam stubbornly goes out against them. He crushes them. And that results in a political revolt that results in a split, to the point that Yeravam becomes the new king in competition to Rechavam. Now, who is this man Yeravam ben Nevat? That's going to be the discussion. Yeravam ben Nevat was not a regular rabble-rouser. Yeravam ben Nevat was not a regular troublemaker. He is the man that the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, Chata v'hechti es harabim. He is the man that when the Chazal talk about those who don't have a chelik in Olam Haba, and that it's debated if he got his chelik, Yeravam ben Nevat is one of these people. Yeravam ben Nevat, the Gemara in Sanhedrin dedicates a very significant amount of space to Yeravam ben Nevat. Yeravam ben Nevat is considered the Gadol Hadar. He's considered the greatest spiritual Torah giant of the generation, to the point that the Gemara in Sanhedrin describes at length how all of the Talmidei Chachamim, Legabi Yeravam, were considered Ka'asvei Hasada, like grass of the field. The Chidushei Torah that came out of his mouth, the Chazal say, nobody ever heard them before. They were unique in their brilliance and their depth. They were unprecedented. On the other hand, the same Yeravam ben Nevat, when he became a king, he was afraid that the Jews are going to go to Yerushalayim and see the Melech of Beis David, especially that in the Beis Hamikdash the only one who could sit is Melech me Beis David. So Yeravam ben Nevat needed a way of keeping the Jews away from the Beis Hamikdash, and he erected 2 golden calves, one in Dan and one in Bethel, not one Egel Azav, but 2 Eglei Azav. And he created, instead of Sukkot, the holiday became Cheshvan, the place of worship became a whole new worship, and he is the man who resurrects Avodah Zarah in the land of Israel in a unique, original way like nobody before. So Yeravam ben Nevat's downfall was from such a lofty status that he's not in the regular list of people who made some trouble. Yeravam ben Nevat is unique. And here we come to this Gemara in Sanhedrin Kuf Beis. The Gemara addresses a pasuk in Melachim Aleph, Peirik Yud Gimel. It says, Achar Advarim Ha'ela, I'm going to read to you the Gemara, Achar Advarim Ha'ela, Achar Adavar Hazeh, Lo Yishav Yeravam Midarkei Hara. After this story, Yeravam still did not repent from his evil path. Frag the Gemara, my Achar Adavar Hazeh. It doesn't say a story. Tell me a story. After this story, Yeravam didn't repent. It doesn't say a story. What's Achar Adavar Hazeh? What happened that he still didn't do tshuva? What happened? So Chazal record a tradition of Rabbi. Rabbi said, and I quote, Achar shetofse HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yeravam bebigdoi. After the Rebbeinu Shalom grasped onto Yeravam by his cloak, va'amar, and he says to him, Chazor bach, return, do tshuva, and listen to the deal. Va'ani, va'ata, uben Yishai, netayel began Eden. I, you, and the son of Yishai, meaning David HaMelech, will take a stroll in Gan Eden. You do tshuva, me, you, and Ben Yishai take a stroll in Gan Eden. Amar loy, Yeravam ben Nevat tells Hashem, mi berosh. In the walk in paradise, who walks first? Me or David HaMelech? Amar loy, Hashem says, Ben Yishai berosh. The son of Yishai walks first. He says, Ihachi loy be'ina. Thank you, but no thank you. If this is the setup, I don't want it. I don't want it. That's pshat. Achar hadavar hazel lo yishav Yeravam midarkei hara. After this event, he still didn't do tshuva. What's this event? That God himself reveals himself to Yeravam and says, do tshuva, ani va'ato ben Yishai netayel began Eden. He rejects the offer blatantly, and he says, I have my own life. Have a wonderful day. That's the story. The story is, of course, extremely enigmatic and extremely strange. God reveals himself to Yeravam. He doesn't reveal himself to every sinner, especially a titanic sinner. Hashem reveals himself to Yeravam. But let's analyze the words now. Chazal were very meticulous and precise, even if the superficial student doesn't realize how precise and meticulous they were. So let's listen to the story. When Hashem tells Yeravam, do tshuva, and I have a deal for you, his words are, Ani, ve'ata, uben Yishai netayel began Eden. Me, you, and the son of Yishai will stroll in Gan Eden. So he already said who goes first. Yeravam says, Mi berosh. You just heard me berosh. It's you. Why asking? But he asks. Hashem could have said in the other order. He knows his order. He could have said, Ani, uben Yishai, va'ata netayel began Eden. Not what he says. It's Ani, va'ato ben Yishai. But Yeravam heard what Hashem said. Mi berosh. So what is it? He wants to know if God was, if there was a slip here, if it was a psa. What's the lashon? Pleitas hapeh. Pleitas hapeh means, you spit a word out of your mouth. He says, mi berosh. So suddenly Hashem changes the order. Ben yishai berosh. He didn't say that. Ihachi loy be'ina. What is going on here? From here, the Arizal opens up a door to decipher the deeper layers of the story. But all the Arizal tells us is that Yeravam is Yosef, and Ben Yishai is David HaMelech. Yeravam comes from Ephraim is Yosef, and David HaMelech is Yehudah. And the question is, what's the place of Malchus? What is the place of Malchus? Arizal says, B'chol Hanal, with all that we learned, we'll be able to understand the Gemara, we'll be able to understand this passage in Shas. I once met a Vishnitzer Chassid. I was in Ireland. I met a Vishnitzer Chassid there. So he told me, we were speaking about this Gemara. So he told me a vart. He said, Azay, that the Chaim Shmulevich was the Mir Rosh Yeshiva. We learned by him quite a few years. He was a legendary Rosh Yeshiva, and he had a good sense of humor, and he was also a very emotional person. He was a very deep Vayigash. So he was once talking about this Gemara, and he asked this question. So Chaim said, tongue in cheek, he said, I'll tell you the pshat. He says, one of my students is getting married, so he invites me to be Masada Kedusha. So I'm standing over there by the chuppah, sitting by the chuppah, and the MC, the master manche, the master of ceremonies, gets up, and he invites me to Siddur Kiddush. But he doesn't just say my name. He does a whole Megillah of titles. Izme Mechabed, Rosh Yeshiva, Gadol Ador, Goan Olam, Amud Hayamin, Patish HaChoyzek, Tzadik Yisoid Olam, Rabbi Shel Kol Bnei HaGoyle, Amud Ha'or, Butzinek, whatever, Allah, Milas, all the things. Gon, HaGodl, Sarah Torah, V'Achesed, of Chaim Shmulevich, to come do Siddur Kiddush. Chaim says, you think I go? I don't go anywhere. Ich will es her noch einmal. I don't go anywhere. I want to hear it again. They do it again, then I go. So Chaim says, so he says, Yeravam in Nevat, he heard that he goes first. Just gewollt her noch einmal. Just wanted to hear it again. That's it. Mi berosh. Just say it again. Just do it once more. The feeling of validation, the compliment feels so good. Yeah. And you'll see some of the conversations, when you get a compliment, you ask a question so that the person will repeat it. If not in these words, this happens very often. Not often does a compliment come your way, right? So once you get it, you cherish it. You want to hold it in a bottle like the Chacham did with the Levana. There was no Levana, so he had a barrel open at night with water, and when he saw the moon in the water, he sealed the bottle so that tomorrow you could do Kiddush Levana. That's how compliments work as well. So therefore, you want to hear it again. So Yeravam ben Nevat tells God, Mi berosh. So the Rebbeinu Shalom says, a zweite Mal nicht. Once yet, not a second time. That was Reb Chaim Shmulevich's humorous comment to explain how people work when it comes to honors and compliments and so forth. But now we get introduced into the deeper component of the story. Really, in this conversation and in this subtle exchange, you really have the whole story. Remember, Yeravam comes from Yosef. David ben Yishai comes from Yehudah. He's the first melech of Yehudah. He represents Malchus Yehudah. Motzasi David Avdi b'Shem and Kotshim Mechachtiv Lo Yasur Shevet mi Yehudah Mechoykekum bein Raglov Karati Vrisle B'chirin Ishbati LeDavid Avdi, that the royalty remains by him. A whole capital in Tehillim, capital Pei Tes 89, dealing with this. Says the Maamer. Be Maamer Chazal b'chelik shetov shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yeravam ben Nevat v'amaloi chazor b'chav charata. And if yes, ani v'ato ben Yishai amaloi mi berosh, amaloi ben Yishai berosh, amaloi hachi loi bin. Shehu mamish ha'inyan anal. This story is mamish representation of everything we discussed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu ratza sheyaravam yachzor b'tshuva. Hashem wanted Yeravam should return in tshuva and repentance. Va'oz yoyer boy mebchinas u'madregas Yosef. And then the state of consciousness of Yosef will shine through Yeravam. B'chinas eitz Ephraim. He will be worthy to that tree, to that branch that Yecheskel speaks about in later generations, the tree of Ephraim, which represents the Melucha of Yosef. Yeravam ben Nevat represents Yosef's Melucha. In other words, Melucha went back to Yosef through Yeravam. It went away from Shlomo's family. There was a split now. There's two Eitzim. There's the Eitz of Yehudah and the Eitz of Ephraim. And he comes from Ephraim. Yeravam ben Nevat was Shevet Ephraim. This is why he calls it Eitz Ephraim. He's referring to Yeravam Yecheskel, because he is supposed to be that second Melech, and he is. He represents the new dynasty, which begins with a king from Yosef from Ephraim. V'zeu ani v'ato ben Yishai netayel began Eden sheyeh meir b'em ein soif baruch hu ba'arei Rabbi. That's the meaning. Let us stroll in Gan Eden. What does it mean to stroll with God in paradise? It means Shabbos, Nachon Cholent. Nachon Cholent. I was in Antwerp a few weeks ago, so when I came from the airport, they said this is the Cholent Park. The whole city knows it as the Cholent Park. I said, what's Pshat Cholent Park? They said, for generations after Cholent, this is where Jews took a walk. So they came to be known in the city as the Cholent Park. So Shabbos after Cholent, Hashem says, we'll take a walk, we'll go around the lake, me, you, and Ben David. What's Pshat? He says, Netayel began Eden means something. It means sheyeh meir b'em ein soif baruch hu ba'arei Rabbi. It's symbolic. When you take a stroll, it's different when you're taking a walk because you have to get somewhere. The idea of Netayel is a tainuk. It's a moment of delight, of ecstasy, of pleasure. So when he says, you and me and Ben Yishai will be Netayel in Gan Eden, it means that in you there will be a tremendous oir, a tremendous revelation of Ein Sof, of the infinite, with a tremendous Ha'arei Rabbi. In other words, there will be an exclusive, intimate relationship that you, me, and Ben Yishai will have. So you will experience me, he will experience me, and will experience me in a state of pleasure and delight. Gan Eden, what does Gan Eden mean? Gan Eden is not a place. You take a rocket ship and you go 100 billion light years away and you're going to land in Gan Eden. Gan Eden is a state of consciousness. When we say Gan Eden is a spiritual state, the Rambam writes in Hilchos Tshuva, Olam Haba doesn't mean it's a future world that doesn't exist now. Olam Haba means a world that sometimes people can only experience when their consciousness is in an elevated space. When they're in a body experience, they can't experience. That's what he says in Hilchos Tshuva. So Gan Eden is a state of consciousness. Like the Gemara says in Brachas Yud Zayin, Tzadikim yoshvim atreseim b'reisheim v'nenim eziv hashchina. There's a certain experience of the divine reality. You will have an experience, but not just an experience. Netayel began Eden, in a unique way. Even you, because Yosef was a person who was very deeply in touch with the divine energy, and you will capture and reflect the gilui, the oir of Yosef, the eitz of Ephraim, b'ha'arei Rabbi, with tremendous oir. V'zehu ani, and this is the meaning when he says ani va'ata uben yishai netayel began Eden. This ani, which refers to I, Hashem, this is going to be revealed in your life. Amar loi. Yeravam ben Nevat heard that he comes first. He knew that. But he says, Mi beroish. What's his question? This is a very deep question. Hu ratza k'moshe haya achshav. He wants to make sure that forever the reality remains like it is today. Shebchinas amadregas Yosef u'lamayla b'chinas Yehudah. Yosef is superior to Yehudah. Yosef is the king. Yehudah is subservient to Yosef. Vayigash, Eilav Yehudah. Yosef is the Mashber Bar. Yosef is the Melech. Everyone bows down to Yosef. Even Yehudah, in the dreams of Yosef, all the Alumos, all the sheaves bow down to Yosef. The sun and the moon and the 11 stars bow down to Yosef. Yosef is the Melech. Va'aviv Shamar es Hadavar, we say in Vayeshev. Yaakov kept on to the dream. He knew the brothers are jealous, but Yosef has to be the king, and that's what happens. They all come to Egypt and they bow down to him, including Yehudah. So in the Yeravam and Yeravam and Rechavam and Yeravam and David, He wants to be Berosh. He wants, Yosef is higher than Yehudah. Aval HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amalai, but Hashem told him, Tayere Yeravam, La'asid Lava Yisala Yehudah. In the state of the future of La'asid Lava, Yehudah becomes sublimated, and the shirish of Yehudah gets revealed, where Yehudah is higher than Yosef. L'chein Ben Yishai Berosh. Hence, Ben Yishai comes out on the top. Ben Yishai comes first. Amalai. Yeravam says, Ihachi. If this is how it is, Loi Be'ina. This I'm not interested in. Yeravam was not capable to the real ultimate experience of this type of bittul. If he's on the top, he'll do tshuva. If he's not on the top, if Yehuda's on the top, he won't do tshuva. That's what the Gemara says in Sanhedrin. Gasus haruach shebi Yeravam tardasim min ha'olam.
Even if he's not going to stay on the top, because right now he is.
Right. He's not going to stay on the top. The Gemara says the arrogance of Yeravam is what swept him away from the world. How do we translate gasus haruach? We always translate it as arrogance. Gas means gas, grub, brute, coarse. Gas haruach means a spirit of coarseness, arrogance. But here, gasus haruach means something else. The Balatanya in the Kutta Torah, I think Bahaloischor, so it says gasus haruach means the ruchnius is gas. Gasus haruach means the ruchnius is gas. You're dealing with spirituality, but it's a spirituality that is coarse. It's gas. That gasus haruach is not a regular arrogance. It's a spiritual form of arrogance. In other words, it's an elevated gasus. You have ruchnius. You're not a gashmi, you're a ruchni. But the ruchnius is a gas. It's brute, it's coarse. It's not refined ruchnius. That is tardasim in Eilav. And this is where Yeravam and Nevat's downfall happens. What does this mean? Let's understand what the Balatanya is teaching us here. Yeravam is very profound. He knows when Hashem says, me, you, Ben Yishai, are going to stroll in Gan Eden, the order was precise. You come first. The Mi Berosh was not a repetitive question. It was a deep question. I come first, I know that. But is that the journey or is that the destination? Is Mi Berosh part of the journey of history, that I'm first? Or is it the truth? In other words, I know that I come first, but I want to know Mi Berosh. Who's really Berosh? I want to know the truth, Mi Berosh. What is this vision that you have for us in this world?
Destination is not right. Destination is actually everybody's together.
Okay, but in other words, does it remain this way, that I'm Berosh? So he says Ben Yishan. He says if Hachi Lo Ben. Now what's the Havana? Let's understand. So you take it out of the. Here it's in the names, like the Gemara always says these stories with names, but it's a concept that's being represented, that's being conveyed through the story. So we come back here now to the theme of this Maamer, the contrast and the contention that happens between Yosef and Yehudah. And in history, there is a split. Not only is there a split, there are moments when there's complete hate and alienation, to the point that Yosef is sold into slavery, etc. Then there is forgiveness and reconciliation, but the reconciliation doesn't last forever. V'haraya, the split resurfaces again in Jewish history, and it's Yecheskel who, after the Churban, prophesizes one day v'hoyu la'achadim biyadecha lo yechzu l'shtei mamlachas oid v'avdi David melech alayim la'olam. This split is resurfacing now again in the life of Yeravam. Generations after Yosef and Yehudah made peace, lo yachal Yosef l'sapik, the tikkun was not complete yet. And the split happens again, and it's again not reconciled, because Yeravam goes off, he does not do tshuva, and there's a split, and the split remains, and Yecheskel prophesies about a future time when there will be complete oneness, even though Ben Yishai will be Berosh. But this Yeravam cannot tolerate.
He also made peace, he accepted that.
In the future, V'avdi David Melech Aleim Lam, there won't be a split anymore.
Accepted then.
Yosef? Well, Yosef was in Egypt, he wasn't alive then. But Yehudah accepted Yosef's malchus, of course. They all understood. Okay, let's see. The Shalah writes that the reason the brothers despised Yosef so much is because they saw Yeravam. They saw in Yosef his grandchild Yeravam ben Nevat, and they saw his merida in Malchus Beis David, because he was moirid. And moirid b'malchus beis David is chayev misa. And malchus beis David is the source of Mashiach. In other words, Yeravam ben Nevat is kofer Mashiach and malchus beis David, and therefore they paskin Yosef was chayev misa. That's what the Shalosh says. Again, what does this mean? It all kol hadvarim kol nechalim holchem alayam. It all comes back to this nekuda that's being conveyed. So what is the issue? What is Yeravam struggling with? Yeravam is struggling with one question. And it's really the question of all, it's really one of the biggest questions. And that is life about me or is life about truth? What is it? What is life? Is life about me or is life about not me? To quote one man, to be or not to be, that is the question. But let's paraphrase it. To be or to be not, that is the question. Not to be or not to be or to be not. Is life about being, to be, or is life about to be not? Now, this is a very deep question. It's not philosophical, theological. It begins that level, but it trickles down to everything. Every experience. From relationships to marriage, from education. And the biggest issue is what comes to religion, which by definition is about a relationship with something beyond yourself, with God, with truth, with Hashem. To be or to be not. Or as we put it in other words, to find yourself in God, to be. And to be at all costs, or to be not. To be not. So, every child asks this question from his parents. Maybe not in Shakespearean English, but in more genuine English. Every yeshiva bach asks this question. Every girl asks this question. They articulate it in different ways, but it's the same question. What is it about? What is it? Is it about being, or is it about being not? Self-expression, self-transcendence, self-realization, self-forgetfulness, self-actualization, or surrender to something that is deeper than yourself? That's the big question. What did we learn here in this Maamer? We learned here in this Maamer that by definition, history of the world and history of every person goes through different stages. There is the experience of Tzemeach, there's the experience of Daima. The experience of Tzemeach is you find yourself to be. The experience of Daimim is V'nafshi ka'afal hakol tiyah, I'm silent. What does it mean I'm silent? It's not about me expressing myself. It's about me serving. Me serving. Bittul, self-nullification, self-abnegation, self-obliteration, self-transcendence. However you want to translate it or define it. Now, the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya, said that in today's day, Yosef is beyond Yehudah, is higher than Yehudah. Why is Yosef higher than Yehudah? The same reason that Hashem tells Yeravam, me, you, and Ben Yishai will go together in Gan Eden. In other words, you come before Ben Yishai. Why do you come before Ben Yishai? Because in the process of evolution of the human being, from ignorance to enlightenment, from bruteness to depth, from ignorance to wisdom, from distance to closeness, Doimim is inspired by Tzemeach. Yehudah is inspired by Yosef. Vayigash Eilav Yehudah vayomer bi Adoni. Ava v'yira is deeper, superior, more inspiring than Bittul. And therefore, whose avodah comes first? Mi b'roish. Who is the leader? Who sets the tone? Yeravam ben Nevat sets the tone. Granted. But Yeravam ben Nevat wants to know something else. He wants to know who's really b'roish. Who's really b'roish? Hashem says ben Yishai b'roish. This nekuda Yeravam cannot deal with.
It's really going back to Machshava versus Maisa.
Yeah. This nekuda Yeravam will not be able to deal with. Why can't Yeravam deal with this? Because Yeravam ultimately will not surrender his ego, ever. Yeravam has no problem to find the God that fits into him, that he's good. He has no problem to find the godliness that suits his identity, where he can find himself, where he can express himself, where he could say, I feel good. In other words, I will use you to make me feel good. Spirituality is a tool for my self-actualization, for my self-expression. And God says, I know you're leading the way. He says, no, I want to know what's the ultimate truth. I want to know what's the ultimate truth. Hashem says that the ultimate truth is that the ultimate truth is that ein oid mulvadai. The ultimate truth is that when your eye will really discover your eye won't be I anymore. Our eyes, your eye and my eye, are really one. Self-actualization serves a very important purpose in the world of distance, in overcoming the gulf. And you can't skip it, because if you deny it, and you deny the need, as we explained, that piece of you that's separate remains completely detached, and could remain abused, and could be crushed, and will come back to haunt you. So self-actualization is not only a stepping stone, it's an imperative. It's a catalyst, it's a springboard, it's the hachon, it's the foundation on which Yehudah can one day be the melech. If Yosef is not the melech, Yehudah will never be the melech. You know why? Because Yehudah's malchus will not be able to be wholesome. It would be like your child is dating, and you said, should I get engaged to this person? And you say, do you have any feelings? Do you feel that this will enhance your life, enrich your life? Are you crazy over this person? Are you excited? And the parent will say, and another parent will say, since when is life about excitement? And since when is life about ego? And since when is life about your emotions? Life is about ani nivreisi l'shamash eskoini, serve God. She wants to serve God together with you. Wonderful. People have gotten this advice. You think it's right advice for people? You think it's right advice for a person? It's not advice for a person. Why is it not right advice for a person? Because what happens then is, you did not deal with the self. You ignored the self. You obliterated the self. You crushed the self. And the self remains outside of the relationship. And your relationship is one that operates only on a level where you don't exist. But on the level where you do exist, there's no relationship. There's frustration, there's annoyance. It may be repressed, it may be conscious. But when that comes out, oy gewalt. You won't be able to survive unless you destroy that part of yourself, and then there's no relationship anyway. You're just a zombie. People become zombies. We know that. They become zombies. They don't exist. So for Yehudah to be a king, Yosef has to be a king. And only when Yosef is a king can he prepare the ground for Yehudah being a king. So when the brothers are upset with Yosef, why are you the melech? You are the black sheep. You're destroying Judaism. You're turning it into an ego. Really, the answer is, if not for Yosef, Yehudah will never be able to be the king. Yosef is not the competitor of Yehudah. Yosef is the one who lays the groundwork for Yehudah. Yosef is the one who prepares the road for Yehudah. And then Yehudah could come in. Again, Yosef and Yehudah here are conveying two concepts, two realities. We're not even talking about so much the people. Yeravam ben Nevat, now what happens? So now look what happens. Yosef is the king. The Mishkan goes in from the Midbar to Shiloh. Okay. The Mishkan in Midbar was not like the Mishkan in Shiloh. You know that. The Mishkan in Shiloh had walls of stone, but the roof was still Urias. In other words, the Mishkan in Shiloh was an intermediary stage between the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash. We said that the Beis HaMikdash, it was all offer. The Mishkan was Chayt Semeach Doimim. The Shiloh, which was by Yosef, was an intermediary stage. You had partially wall, partially beams, and then on top you had Chay. So you had a mixture. The Melucha goes to Binyamin, which is Shaul, and then it goes to David, which is Yehudah, which is supposed to be the Tikkun HaShalem, because now you have Yehudah. But Shloimeh, the Pasuk says that the end of Shloimeh's life, relative to the Madrega of Shloimeh, he fell. Shloimeh HaMelech fell. What does this mean? This means that history was saying you're not done with Yosef yet, so you can't jump to Yehudah. So we have to now go back to Yosef. Because if you didn't deal with Yosef, you can't go to Yehudah. So we have to now go to Yeravam ben Nevat. Yeravam ben Nevat is going to have to pick up where Yosef left off, and he will prepare the groundwork for Yehudah to come back. So you have Yosef, you have Yehudah, and then God says we got to go back to Yosef. Yeravam ben Nevat is that person. He's that individual. Yeravam ben Nevat is a giant of giants. He is Yosef once again. Yefei Torah, Yefei Mara, not only physically but spiritually. He says, you, me, you, and Ben Yishai will take a stroll in Gan Eden. And Ben Yishai will be inspired by you. Ben Yishai will follow you. Doimim will follow you. That's what Doimim is. Doimim has to be fueled by a sense of inspiration. But the Yeravam wants to know one thing. Mi beroish. What's the emes? What's the real emes? And when Hashem says, Ben Yishai beroish, he says, no. This doesn't work. There's no point where Yeravam ben Nevat can let go. He's never ready to really let go. He's not ready. So this is a very subtle moment where, at the surface, Yeravam ben Nevat is the giant of the generation, and he comes before David HaMelech. But deep down, at the core of his self-expression, there is a profound toxicity that ultimately puts Yeravam into a different world than Yosef. Yosef is Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef is a person who's considered not just Davuk in the Shechina, but Yosef in many ways is one of the greatest giants in Jewish history. Right? Yeravam ben Nevat ultimately becomes the great Chayto Machdiyas HaRabim. Not because he didn't have Ruchnius. He had Gasus HaRuach. For him, Ruchnius always remained coarse. Spirituality ultimately was self-serving. God was ultimately self-serving. And he could never ever melt. He could never ever appreciate Vayihi Kenagein HaMenagein Vatihi Eilav Ruach Hashem, that the Menagein becomes a Nagein. He could never really appreciate that. He had to hold on. That's what Avodah Zarah means. He becomes the master. What does Avodah Zarah mean? Avodah Zarah means you have to hold on to the sense of separateness. I will not acknowledge absolute unity. I will fight for separateness till the end. Why? Because I'm not ready to give that up. I will not be ready to give that up. Ever. I'm going to fight for it. What if truth is there? Ultimately, truth will have to go. At this point, there's no reconciliation. At this point, Yosef is not Yosef anymore. At this point, self-expression is a form of idol worship. That's the story of Yeravam.
Comes back to his question then. So how is Yosef on the one hand saying, acknowledging that he is superior, and this is his quote shlichus, but saying that he understands that at some point it's not going to be that way? In other words, he's unlike Yeravam. He acknowledges, I'm here, this is where I'm supposed to be now, the quarterback's down, but he's going to come back and come back to,
When he made peace, he got to that stage.
Yosef's very, very nuanced. Unlike Yeravam, he's acknowledging, he's able to be an absolute powerhouse with all his engagement, and yet at some level to say, but it's not really going to be about me. That's what you have to sort of come up with.
Excellent question. And the truth is that that's what Yecheskel's Nevuah is all about. The two sticks become one. There's no split anymore. And the king is David. Why is Yosef not resentful? It's either me or you. We can't. The Gemara says in Chulin. It doesn't work that way. So So the ein melech, the ein balabas.
One has to die.
Mashiach ben Yosef, you mean?
I'm saying.
Yeah. But you don't say, we say there's no split anymore. What does this really mean? It really means that Yosef's self-expression is really part of the oneness. There's no real separation. It's all part of oneness. For oneness to be one, it must permeate you, it must penetrate you. The klal, you can't go to the world of klal if you don't go to the world of prat. You're not really going to the world of klal. It's not Yosef as a compromise. Nebach, it's a weak generation. No, Yosef is not a compromise. Yosef and Yehudah are really one. The way the oneness comes out is in two different modalities. Because it's really one, therefore it's not a contradiction. It's a different hechitimtza. The software is different, not the hardware. There's the way the Achdus is expressed in the mode of history when Yosef has to dominate, and there's the way it comes out in Yehudah. You see, we're used to a world of hierarchy. That's how we're indoctrinated into a world of hierarchy, not a world of unity. So when we hear Yehudah is l'mayla mi Yosef, we're not hearing what he says. What we're hearing is Yehudah is going to sit in Mizrach, and Yosef is going to sit in Ma'ariv, right? And somebody's going to say, let's make a breakaway chassidus. You know what I mean? That's what we hear. We can't get out of that model. Yehudah is the king. Well, I was the king, so what happens? Okay, I won't split. You'll give me enough money. We keep on going to that place, but it's not the space we have to go to. You have to go into different. When you say David is the king, Yehudah is the king, don't understand Yehudah as a person. If Yehudah is doimim, if Yehudah is bittel, so then what makes him a king is not that he's a king, that he's a conduit, that he's not a king. And Yosef is completely there. What makes Yehudah a king is that he's not a king. His power is his powerlessness. His power is his powerlessness. I am a conduit. Vayhi kenagen hamenagen. I'm not preaching to you. I am not leading you. I am not controlling you. I'm a conduit. There's no anoichi. There's no anoichi. That's where Yosef is at home, just like Yehudah. Because that was the Nakuda of Yosef also. That's the difference in Yosef and Yeravam. Yeravam was a getchka. Yeravam was ultimately a getchka. He didn't sound like one. He sounded like a Gadol Hadar, but he was a getchka. Yosef sounded the same. But the subtle mind knew that Yosef is much closer to Yehudah than Yeravam is to Yosef. Yosef and Yeravam preached the same gospel. Self-expression, self-actualization, self-realization. But Yosef was really closer to Yehudah than Yeravam was to Yosef. Why? Because the software was identical. But in hardware, in core, or the chip, I should say, the chip, in computer language, they were absolutely opposite. For Yosef, self-expression is self-surrender. And for Yeravam, the two are irreconcilable. Ihachi loy be'ina. There's no way I will accept it. There's no way I will accept it. So in other words, Yecheskel HaNavi tells us, the whole reason we make this split is only because our brains love polarities. We love two kings. Either he's the king or he's the king. Either it's Daimim or Tzemeach. Either it's Mishkan or the Beis HaMikdash. Either it's self or selflessness. Either there's growth or there's nullification. We love those polarities, and we have to work through that polarity. Yes, in our perception there's a polarity, and that's what I have to work through. That's exactly why there's a space for Yosef and there's a space for Yehudah. Be'emes, there's no split. There's no split. It's Hainu Hach. Because the ultimate self-expression is self-surrender. When that musician feels that he doesn't exist, he doesn't go to therapy the next day and he says, I had the most abusive experience yesterday. My whole metzius was destroyed. His metzius wasn't destroyed. People crave for that moment. It's the moment of ultimate self-realization. What is ultimate self-realization? That you don't have the burden to be. You don't have the burden of existence. I don't have to carry myself. I could be self-aware without being aware of the self. Self-aware without being aware of the self. I don't have to navigate the self, because the self is so one with truth that it could just be without being. It could be without being. That's not a moment of compromise, it's a moment of great self-expression. So the ultimate self-expression is in self-surrender. And the ultimate self-surrender demands self-expression. Because if you surrender without the self will come to haunt you and bite you. And ultimately you can't surrender. Why can't you surrender? Because the you was completely left behind. And the you is not transcending, the you is being crushed. But there's stages. There's a stage in life which Semeach is the dominant feature and Doimim is necessary. I told you, discipline is always necessary. Doimim is always necessary. But the Doimim serves the Semeach. And this itself has two modalities. Modality number one is, you mentioned yesterday, people are obedient. But they're obedient because of an inner value. If I'm obedient because of an inner value, then it's not a form of repression, it's a form of self-expression. If I have an inner value that I'm ready to fight for, I'll fight for it. But when I'm fighting for it, I'm not destroying myself. I'm really expressing myself. I'm expressing an inner value that's more valuable than the outer instinct, whatever that inner value is. So that is a daimon that's also an expression of tzemeach. Sometimes there's a moment of daimon when I can't even feel my inner value. So there is more surrender there, but still it's makabel from tzemeach in the sense that it's being fueled by a certain form of inspiration. But nonetheless, nobody can celebrate that daimon and say it's deeper than tzemeach. It's not.
This Mahalach, the Rabbi Shalom's answer to Yeravam takes on a new meaning. It's not that he's saying to Yeravam, no, la'asil lavo, it's going to be ben yishai barosh. It's like you think you understand what the Mahalach is, but even now it's ben yishai barosh because his Mahalach is not what you think it is.
Exactly. Even now ben yishai is barosh. La'asil lavo is just the removal of the veil where the truth of reality will emerge. And in the truth of reality will emerge, of course daimon is higher than Semeach. How could Semeach be higher than daimon? In Semeach, I'm busy overcoming my ego and dealing with my ego. In daimon, there's complete oneness. The daimon that I experience today doesn't have that power. Because in a world of separation, daimon is discipline and surrender, and I don't care about what you're feeling, right? I'm going to go back to that simple example of dieting. You may have an inner value to live. A lot of Jews don't. But you may have an inner value that life, health is a good thing, right? You may have that inner value. So when this food that's toxic for you is there, it's enticing. Nonetheless, you'll say, I want it, but I'm not going to have it. Is that called suppression of self? No, we know it's called actually realization of self. You articulated a very deep value, but still you have to surrender a certain part. Instincts, moods, cravings. That's where discipline comes in. And one can't expect in that mode to experience the full glory of daimon because there is a separateness. And in that separateness, I am in a lowly state. I still crave poison and toxicity. That's what I love. And the moment I'm not in control, I will go there. Huh? Of course, mi beroish means I know I'm beroish. I heard you say it, I'm not deaf. I want to know what's really beroish, what's really about this. This core, this subtle core, is very hard to sense. Two people could be saying the same thing. Yeah. One is Yosef Atzadik and one is a Getchke. It's a very different thing. And I now go the other way. Yehudah can also be saying the same thing like somebody else. Same thing. One is a form of the deepest unity and self-expression, and one is a form of destruction. But even the daimon today it's the Yehudah element. I may not experience the full grandeur of it, but it's rooted in a oneness that is so powerful, and that's why the daimon has that koyach even today. It's the machshava tchila. Machshava is cheshev ma. Yeravam says, no. I'm not ready for ma. I'm not going to ma. As long as I could find myself in God, I'm good. As long as I can find myself in God, I'm good. You want to say something?
Yeravam just went from being this egotistical maniac to being
Yes.
liberation is what we all struggle with.
Yes. So Yeravam is not an egotistical maniac, this guy who wakes up in the morning and is a serial killer, an idol worshiper. Yeravam is you and I. Yeravam is far deeper. When you read the sugya in Sanhedrin, Kuf Beis, Kuf Gimel, Al Pi Pshat, you're like, there's something off here. The Gemara says that there was nobody on the Madrega of Yeravam. Nobody in Torah like the Madrega of Yeravam. Achi Ashiloini was blown away by Yeravam. The Gemara says, Hu and Chi Ashiloini, Shneim Basadam, Eskasim, Besimla Chadasha, Lo Shaman Oizen Mei Oilam. Yeravam, on every halacha in Torah's Koyanim, he could explain it in 103 ways. Kuf Gimel. Kuf Gimel, it says, the Arizal says, Begematria Egel. And it's in Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Gimel, Begematria Egel. Why? Because that's Yeravam. Yeravam's energy is very deep in Torah. The way it trickles down, it morphs into an Egel. But it doesn't start with an Egel. It starts off with a tremendous koyach hachidish. Because he's so innovative, because he's so expressive, somebody who's not innovative, somebody who's not expressive, Yehudah works very well, you know? If you got no personality, obedience is a wonderful thing. You love it. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. Slavery has a lot of advantages. You know why? You never take responsibility and you always have somebody to blame. So there's a tremendous glory there. Yeravam is not stam and egotistical meshugana rasha merusha. Yeravam is struggling with something very, very, very profound. And it's a struggle that the deeper the person is, the greater the struggle is. Because if I'm not deep, surrender in its ultimate sense is not so difficult. When somebody is a true artist, when somebody has a true song, a true soul, the greatest Mesiras Nefesh is not to give up a material craving. The great Mesiras Nefesh is to give up identity. Identity. Why? Because identity is my richness. To be able to give up identity for truth. And to be able to realize that identity doesn't really give itself up for the sake of truth, because your identity was only supposed to be a reflection of truth. That's where Yosef and Yeravam were two opposites. For Yeravam, identity was for the sake of identity. For me, for life, identity, that the powerful play goes on, and I can contribute my verse. What will be your verse? Life is a play, and everybody contributes their verse. But my verse is my verse. I'm not ready to give up my verse. Yeravam says, I'm not ready to give up my verse. So in summation, he explained that the conversation between the Rebbeinu Shel Olam and Yeravam ben Nevat in Masechta Sanhedrin of Kuf Beis, where Hashem offers Yeravam ben Nevat an offer that most of us would say is one that you can't refuse. Namely, do tshuva, and me, and you, and the son of Yishai will take a stroll in Gan Eden. Yeravam ben Nevat wants to know who will lead, and when he hears David HaMelech will lead, he rejects the offer. And the only thing the Gemara can say about that is that Gasus HaRuach Terdasim in Eilav. Sometimes great people can be so profoundly derailed because of their pompousness, because of their inability for humility, because of their arrogance. But here the story takes on a whole different dimension, or I should say not a different dimension, a deeper dimension. Namely that this was really not just plain brute, foolish arrogance. At the end of the day, does it really matter who walks first? If David is in the front and you're in the back, or why can't he ask God to expand the Gan Eden so they can make it walk together? Three people could sometimes walk together also. It's nicht the Ekwelt, right? Does the path in Gan Eden have to be so narrow that only two could fit in, and therefore one has to be in the back? Can Marchiv sein the Gan Eden? We could do some demolition and construction. I mean, Yeravam ben Nevat could have been creative. But no, befedish not. The word is, he said, I will not follow in this process. I will not follow, I will only lead. I will not be a follower, I will only be a leader. So the Baal HaTanya, the Alter Rebbe, explained to us in summation that Yeravam ben Nevat is the B'chin of Yosef. Ben Yishai is of course David. David Melech Yisrael is the B'chin of Yehudah, the Shevet Yehudah. And as a result of that, the debate here was really resurfacing the contention between Yosef and Yehudah. Shlomo HaMelech's kingship went to Yeravam, but now Yeravam is initiated into the Melucha. In other words, Yosef resurfaces as a king, and the Rebbeinu Shalom says, if you could realign yourself with your ancestor, your holiness could be so powerful to the point that you will experience in this world Gan Eden, and not just Gan Eden, you will experiencing a stroll in Gan Eden. Strolling on Eden means you will experience an infinite explosion and revelation of divine, infinite energy. But Yeravam ben Nevat has one condition. He says, fine, I'm happy to be in Yosef's position, but I want to know if, truthfully, mi beroish, who is truly superior. And when Hashem says it's David HaMelech, he says, he cannot come to terms with the fact of this Maamer, that Yehudah in Shirish is Lamayla mi Yosef, and La'asid Love, it's going to be revealed Avdi David Melech Aleim La'ayim. And that's the Gasas HaRuach of Yeravam. It's not pompous, foolish, arrogance, stupidity, where you can't walk in the back, but rather, you didn't get bracha achrita by the chuppah, and therefore you won't speak to the mechutin for 65 years, because you didn't get the right bracha under the chuppah. But rather, the situation here is a very profound, an internal resistance. What he says is only really what he's saying. It's an internal, philosophical, theological, psychological, spiritual, emotional, existential resistance to the very notion of the Avdi David Melech Aleim La'olam. He cannot make peace with the role that Shevet Yehudah, that Malchus, Mashiach, David Shlomo plays in Klal Yisrael, in Jewish history. And it's not here the person as much as it is what the person represents, what David represents. Now he comes to the last piece. Umeyeinza, you see the line starts with Umeyeinza, 4 lines from the end of the Maamer. Umeyeinza is boyer gamkin b'makom acher binyan hameraglim. A similar idea we explained elsewhere actually in Parshas Shlach, the Baal HaTanya explains about the spies. It's a very interesting comment here. The way, people take these psukim for granted. When the Torah describes the sending of the Meraglim, this is what has to be pointed out here because this is the key note that he wants to address. So the Rebbeinu Shalom tells Moshe Rabbeinu, Shlach lecha anoshim. V'yasuru es eretz Canaan. Send men and let them scout the land. Vayishlach oisam Moshe sent them in Midbar Paran al Pi Hashem. Kulam anoshim. They were all men. And for the Baal HaTanya, that was the tragedy. Tragedy was they were all men. So the Klei Yakar already says that they weren't women. The problem is they weren't women. That Hashem told Moshe, if you want to send spies, you should only send women. The Klei Yakar says this. Because Hashem knew that the women are in love with Eretz Yisrael, and the men are not. And therefore, he said, women you could trust. They will not be distracted by the obstacles of Eretz Yisrael. It's a fascinating Klei Yakar, not written in the 21st century, but written in the 17th century in Prague, before the 1950s. That's what the Klei Yakar says. That's why Hashem says, Shlach lecha anoshim. You know what your problem is? That you only think you could send men, and if you would send women, there would be no problems. Moshe Rabbeinu thought you should be sending men, and Hashem said that's going to be a disaster. Interesting. So that's his saying pushed al pi pshat, because the women were in love with Eretz Yisrael. You see it with the Bnei Slavchat. They fought for Eretz Yisrael. Tnu lanu achuzah. The men kept on saying, let's go back to Mitzrayim, and the women are like, we want Eretz Yisrael. And that's why it actually says that the whole sin of the Meraglim was only for the men. The women were not part of it. They did not weep. Which is why, as Rashi says, all the women went into Eretz Yisrael. Nobody died. during those 40 years, which is the beginning of the Shidduch crisis.
So they can't be mitzvah from each other.
A disproportionate amount of women. That's why we spoke. You can't be the mitzvah of Taminyan, because the Gemara says in Megillah that a minyan you learn from the Meraglim. The whole yisoid of a minyan is Meraglim, and a minyan is men. Okay. So interestingly, this follows a similar pattern, but on a different level. What's the Eretz Yisrael represents Malchus. Eretz Elyoina. There's the physical Eretz Yisrael, but the physical Eretz Yisrael is parallel to the spiritual Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, the land, the earth, the diamond, they didn't have the humility to appreciate Eretz Yisrael. Shedimu ba'atzmam, they believed she'ein srichem laza. They need Eretz Yisrael. Liyosan me'alma d'tchura. They are from the masculine world. Kulam anoshim. They're men. And because they're men, they did not understand that Eishes Chayil Ateres Baila. They didn't appreciate the value of earth, the value of femininity, the value of earthiness, the value of doimim, the value of bittul, the value of malchus. Kulam anoshim. And therefore Eretz Yisrael only turned them off. It uninspired them. They said Eretz oicheles yoshveha. It threatened them. Masculine. Dchar in Aramaic is Zachar. Dalet is substituted with Zion. So Zachar, masculine, becomes Dchar in Aramaic. Alma de Dchura means from the world of Zachrus. Versus Alma de Nukva would be the world of Nekeva, the world of openness, the world of a cavity, the world of femininity. Kulam Anoshem. And therefore they say the land is Oicheles Yeshva. It eats up its inhabitants. Now this needs explanation. What are the Meraglim saying here? What is his taina? So let's see if he finishes. Avol Yosef HaTzadik v'Yehudah. But you should know that all this problem with Yeravam ben Nevat, which is a similar echo to the Meraglim, even though on a different level, with different people, different circumstances, but it has a similar issue, you should know that this is not a permanent conflict. Yosef HaTzadik v'Yehudah yischabru la'asid lavei b'tachlis hayichud. In the future, when all reality will be revealed, when the depth of existence will emerge, and the human eye will be able to perceive the undercurrents of reality, Yehudah and Yosef will become synthesized, integrated, and not just superficially, but b'tachlis hayichud, with the ultimate unity, the perfect unity. Lemehevei echad be'echad k'nisker leil. The expression of the Zohar in Kegavna that we say on Friday. Lemehevei echad be'echad. That one should become one with one. Because it's one. One becomes one with one because it's one. And one remains one. In other words, Yehudah and Yosef are one. That's why the Haftarah of Vayigash is the ultimate realization of this ideal, of this dream, of this truth, which during history is full of tension and turmoil, because from a more external level, the two are conflicted, and the avodah of humanity is to reveal that Yehudah and Yosef are one. That's essentially what avodah is. Avodah is to reveal that Yehudah and Yosef are one. And in that process, you make mistakes. And in that process, you fight. And in that process, you have to discover that you're one. And to discover that you're one, it means you have to work on it. And when you work on it, part of that process is you feel it's not one. And that's why in the first stage of history, Yosef is hated. He's despised by his brothers. He is seen as the greatest threat for the future of the Jewish people. Yehudah is the one who's the king, who is the one who fights him the most. In the sense, because he's the Melech Shabbat, like Rashi says, the reason that they dethroned Yehudah after the Mechira of Yosef is because they said, you were the one ultimately who was responsible for the sale, the famous Rashi in Vayeshev, because you're the Melech Shebashvatim, Ma Betza. His father, on the other hand, believes that there's something very special in Yosef. He holds on to his dreams. The next stage in the story, Yehudah submits to Yosef. He acquiesces to Yosef. Yosef forgives his brother. He embraces his brother. But he is clearly the undisputed leader. They are the recipients and he is the leader. At a later stage in history, a Mishkan is built, modeling Yosef versus Yehudah. Meaning, the roof is chai, the walls are tzemeach, the earth is doimim. At a later stage of history, the Mishkan moves into Eretz Yisrael. Eretz is already earth, land, femininity, malchus. And the Mishkan is reconstructed in Chile for 369 years. And this is a transitional stage, because the Mishkan in Shiloh is what? Its roof is chai, but its walls become daimim. So it's not anymore like the Mishkan, but it's also not like the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash, even the roof will be daimim. In the Mishkan, the roof will not be daimim, the roof will be chai, but the wall will be like the Beis HaMikdash, not the whole wall. I believe the first 10 or 12 amas of the Mishkan and Shiloh was walls, and then out on top of that you had Karashim. So it was mamish an intermediary stage. Then you have the king who comes from Binyamin, Shaul comes from Shevet Binyamin. Then you finally go over from Yosef, Binyamin, that family, from Rachel's family, you go over to Yehudah's family, David. David is supposed to be the king and the Mashiach. David Malch Yisrael Chai V'Kayim, David Malka Mashiach. Malka is called Sudasa, David Malka Mashiach. And he doesn't build the Beis HaMikdash, but his son builds the Beis HaMikdash, which is Zois Menuchasi Adei Ad, where finally the vision of Yehudah takes root. And therefore, Eishes Chayla Teres Baila, the roof and the walls are from Afar. And where is the Tzeimeach in the Beis HaMikdash? The Tzeimeach is Klun Sa'is Shal Erez, cedar wood that supports the gutter on the roof, which is made of rock, of stone. So the Tzeimeach is there, but only supporting the Daimah, and it's hidden. Shlomo HaMelech passes away, and somehow we're not ready for Yehudah yet. So now God says we got to go back. We got to go back to Yosef. You got to go back to Yosef. You got to go back to, that's Yeravam ben Nevat. But Yeravam ben Nevat, instead of going back to Yosef, he goes to he creates a whole new set of problems. He becomes his own Getchke, and now there's a split. Yehudah is incomplete, but Yosef is also incomplete. So instead of Yosef leading up to Yehudah, Yosef is derailed from Yehudah, and there's a complete split, and that split ends up in a churban. Yecheskel prophesies that one day there will be unity.
How long is that split for?
That split goes on for 300 years.
What happened
A little less, for almost 300 years. More than 2 centuries, because the first Beis HaMikdash stands for 410 years. It's built by Shlomo, and right after Shlomo's death, it's a split, and the 10 Shvatim are exiled 150 years before the Churban. So you're dealing with almost 300 years.
Both splits, he's very married and Yosef. What happened to the other side of the law?
With Yehudah. Okay, I'll discuss it in a moment. You asked that yesterday at the end of the Shir.
So the transition of Shiloh is hard to understand though, because Yosef really should have been the quintessential Mishkan. That's all about Someach. And Yehudah, the Mikdash. So, but Shiloh we identify with Yosef also. But yet Shiloh is a mix between...
Because that's in Eretz Yisrael already. That's where the Meraglim come in. Once the Meraglim despise Eretz Yisrael, they want to keep it out of Eretz Yisrael. So the Mishkan out of Eretz Yisrael is completely in the model of Yosef. Once it's in Eretz Yisrael, it already is a transition between Yosef and Yehudah. Now what happens then is, the second Beis HaMikdash is built by Koresh. And the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says, Koresh is Hechmetz. What did he do? He took the Tzeimeach and he put it out. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says, what was Koresh's big rishus? That he built the walls of the Beis HaMikdash, the second Beis HaMikdash, 3 rows stone and 1 row fresh wood. And that's the big hechmetz. So al pi pshat you say, the Gemara says, so he could burn down the building easily. Right? So that's what made him such a rush. He wanted to burn down the building easily in case there's a revolt. Boom, boom, boom. It's not rock, it's wood. We can destroy it. Al pi pnimi is the vart is that this was a destruction. To put Tzeimeach in the Beis HaMikdash in a conspicuous way.
So it wasn't sealed.
It wasn't concealed. By Shlomo, you also had Tzeimeach, but it was in the Daimim. In other words, the Tzeimeach was not gone. The Tzeimeach was subsumed by the Daimim, concealed by them. In other words, it was a din in the Daimim.
It was part of it.
It was a gather in the Daimim. I'll explain what that means in a moment, but that's the key. It was a din in Daimim. By Kodesh, no. The Tzeimeach, it's back to Yeravam. It's back to Yeravam ben Nevat. Ihachi loy be'ina. The Tzeimeach is not going to become subservient to the Daimim. In my Beis HaMikdash, the Tzeimeach stands on its own. Ben Yishai is not going to be Berosh. That's all part of the Tikkun. It's all part of the process. Yecheskel, that's why he finishes the whole Maamer. But there's going to be a day, Lemeve Echad Be'echad, where Yosef and Yehudah will have absolutely no issues, not because they'll each have a separate melucha, but because there will be revealed a truth which will show that they're completely one, and David is going to be Mashiach. You don't say Yosef is going to be Mashiach. Now this, of course, fits in with the two Mashiachs. There's Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. The way the Gemara describes Mashiach ben Yosef, which is a mysterious part of Jewish history, what Mashiach ben Yosef means, the Gemara says Mashiach ben Yosef is going to come before Mashiach ben David. And Mashiach ben Yosef is going to be killed. And then Mashiach ben David will emerge. Now, however we understand this to be in Sifrei HaKabbalah, there's a lot of symbolism in this and metaphor in this, and you know what it means and who Mashiach ben Yosef is and when he comes and what's his role and what do you need him for. But the key is that Mashiach ben Yosef, not only is he not a Yeravam ben Nevat, who is rebelling against Malchus Beis David, but on the contrary, he sees his identity as a prelude, as the one who heralds, as the one who paves the path and creates the path for Mashiach ben David. In other words, that's part of the process of Lemeve Echad Be'echad, the two sticks become one in Yecheskel's hand. So not only are the two Mashiachim not competitors to each other, but one actually is completely dedicated to the emergence of the other.
So on a Paninius level, why would Mashiach ben Yosef be killed on that level? He would be subsumed.
Yeah, well, when we say killed here means like sublimated. Histalkos, sublimated. Sublimated means absorbed by that and integrated. There's no separate consciousness. There's no separate consciousness from Mashiach ben David. The consciousness is absorbed in Mashiach ben David. The Meraglim are perturbed by Eretz Yisrael. Why? Eretz oicheles yoshvehi. A land that eats up its inhabitants. What does it mean, it eats up its inhabitants? Rashi says they saw a lot of funerals, and they said, I don't know, everyone is dying here. Everybody's dying. On a deeper level, what it means is, whenever you deal with daimim, it's oicheles yoshveha. Huh? It's dead. Daimim is dead. It eats up its inhabitants. It creates dead people. You want living people or you want dead people? You want trees or you want rocks? You want people who grow or you want lifelessness? What do you want? You want organic material? You want inorganic material? Was willst du? You want to go to Eretz Yisrael? No problem. But it's the end of Judaism. It's called institutionalized religion.
Gotta go to work.
You gotta go to work. Trumas, meisters, armies, politics, governments, it's over. The show is over. You want to live with God, you stay here. You want to be inspired, you stay here. In Eretz Yisrael, you're going to find Daimim. And in Daimim is Eicheles Yeshva. That's what the Shvat, the Meraglim, that's why he's comparing them to Yeravam ben Nevat. Now, he doesn't mean to say the Meraglim and Yeravam ben Nevat are the same thing. You don't say about the Meraglim what you say about Yeravam ben Nevat. But even Yeravam ben Nevat is sublimated here to a sophisticated spiritual message. Like you said, it's not a rabble rouser. Now, to understand this a little clearer, and the process here, I just want to take your attention to a few lines that we learned earlier, but it was hard to understand it because one has to see the full picture. But I want to go back to those few lines and relearn them, because now I think we'll be able to appreciate it. And in many ways, those few lines contain the core message here. It's the third paragraph from the end of the Maamer. The paragraph starts Vihine Beseder Hishtalshalos, which is the second to the last paragraph on column 1 of Memdalet. And I just want to go back to a line that starts Sharshoy Sha'alav Machshava Tchila Kanal, and read those few lines. Now, they're Kabbalistic lines. That's why it was hard to understand. And they still remain Kabbalistic lines even at the end of the Maamer. That has not changed. I want to make that clear. But there is a few oisius that I want to dwell on to show how the picture, the puzzle is culminated here. So Kihine, he says, La'asid lava, the line starts Yis'ala. La'asid lava Yis'ala Yehudah l'Islam b'chinas Yos, which because of Eishes Chayla Teres Baila, mitzat Sharish Sh'alav Machshavat Chila Kana. The Sharish of Yehudah was always higher. But the shayrish is not revealed. Where is a shayrish? A shayrish is always under the ground. A shayrish is, as they say in Yiddish, tiff in the erd. It's deep in the ground. It's deep under earth. You don't see a shayrish. On the other hand, there's no tree without a shayrish. when the shirish comes out, when the shirish will be revealed, then you will see that in shirish Yehudah was higher, but the shirish we never saw. And Yosef is the tree. The shirish may be higher, but the shirish I don't know about. It's covered. It's underground. But when the shirish is revealed, so then suddenly I say, wow, Yehudah is in a whole different madreg. Kihine machshava hu cheshev ma dainu tachlis habitul shobchines chachma da'atzilus koyach ma. Machshava is cheshev ma, chachma is koyach ma. The two are associated with ma, which means what? Which means bittul. Vihine abba yosad brata. The father gives birth to the daughter. Isha mazriat chilei ladis nekev. V'zel, meaning ki chachma ilah nikra yira ilah. The higher chachma is called higher awe. Chachma tata shia malchus yira tata. There's chachma ilah and chachma tata. Higher wisdom, lower wisdom. Higher awe, lower awe. Higher fear, lower fear. V'zel abba yasad brata. The father is the higher awe. The daughter is the lower awe. Mepchinas yiri ilah the chachma nemshachas hamalchus yira tata. The lower yira comes from the higher yira. Malchus comes from chachma. Ula asid lave tis'al b'chinas yira tata b'yiri ilah mekayra. Now we look at yira tata. We say it's yira tata. The shirish of yira tata is yira ilah. That's its source. But I don't see the makar. And since I don't see the source, I only see the manifestation, I say it's low. It's yira tata. When I could trace it back to the source, when I could see the shirish, it's like I could see the shirish of you. I could see Yehudah in his shirish. Then I say the shirish of yira tata is in yira ilah. If it's in yira ilah, it's higher than the midos, because you have chachma. Then you have, which is part of Chabad, Chachma Bin Adas. Then you have Midos, which is Ava, Yira, Chesed, Gur, Tiferes, Netzach. Then you have Malchus. So you have three stages. You have Chachma Ilah, Yira Ilah, Chachma, Koyach Ma, Cheshev Ma. That's the highest. Then you have Midos, emotions. Then you have Malchus, earthiness, Doimim, femininity, Yira Tata, the lower level of Yira. That's the lowest. Yira Tata is lower than Midos. It's certainly lower than Chachma Ilah, than Yiri Ilah. But when you could find the makar of Yiri Tata and trace it back to Yiri Ilah, then what happens is Tia Az Ateres Baila. Automatically Yiri Tata becomes higher than her husband, which is Midos. Ki habitul hu lamayla b'madrega me'ava v'yira de Midos. Because Bittul is higher than Ava v'yira, because they come from Chesed and Gvura. Olakach gam achshav yesh ba'aretz b'chinas habitul, b'chinas bitul d'yiri lo, b'chinas madregas Moshe Rabbeinu olav hashalom v'nachnu ma. Now, so there's a whole process here. There's a higher level of yira, there's a lower level of yira. In today's day, the lower level of yira remains the lower level of yira, and midos are above it. Because this is daimim, this is semech. What's going to happen, l'asad love, is nothing is going to change. You're just going to see what things are. When you're going to see what things are, you'll see the makar of Yira Tata. It's Yiri Ilah. It's Yiri Ilah. It's much higher than Midas. It's higher than Midas. So automatically Yehudah is higher than Yosef.
We also haven't characterized whether the philosophies of Yosef and Yehudah, are we calling them Yira philosophies or Chacham?
Right. So first I want to talk about the distortions, and then we could talk about healing the distortions. Maza distortions?
We need a PowerPoint presentation.
It's not clear.
When it's crooked.
כשיש אנרגיה טהרה, אבל מעקמים אותה ומשתמשים בה לתכלית לא בריאה. מטושטש, מדולדל, מאומם וכולי וכולי. מאומם, כן. So, you have, Yeravam is a distortion of Yosef. What's a distortion of Yehudah? What would be a distortion of Yehudah? It would be, Yeravam takes Yosef's energy, he gets it, but he doesn't get it. right? And therefore, Yeravam is further from Yosef than Yosef is from Yehudah. Because Yosef and Yehudah will become one. Yeravam and Yosef will never become one. So they look the same, but they're very not the same. They look the same. Yosef and Yehudah look opposite, but really they're one. Really they're one. So you can have a Yosef derailed, you can also have a Yehudah derailed, like everything. Some of Malchi Yehudah were unbelievable people. David, Shloimeh, Chizkiah Melech, Yeshayahu, and then you had, some of the Malchi Yehudah. You had Menashe. You had Yehoyakim, the Jewish Caligula, Mishagayim, tyrants, Tzedreita, Chevra. Crazy people they were. Menashe killed his Zayda, Yeshaya Navi. Also, all Malchi Yehudah these are. It wasn't easy to find a noble king, never mind a normal king. Forget noble, just normal. Because power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
I think it's radical Islam, but I can't put my finger on what the connection between you and the real radical Islam is, but that's what it sounds like.
You're saying radical Islam. So let's see where the two can go wrong, and then where they go right, and how they could go right. And the key here is, however, to remember this line with Yireh Tata and Yireh Ilah. What's the difference between Yireh Tata and Yireh Ilah? What's the difference? What's Yireh Ilah? What's Yireh Tata? It's clear that Yehudah is Yireh Tata Bizman Hazeh. La'asid Lava, you're going to see that Yireh Tata is Yireh Ilah. That's its marker. Oh, wow, so it's higher than Midas. It means you could serve Hashem in three ways. You could serve Hashem on the highest way, or highest model, it was Yireh Ilah. The next is Midos, Ave, Yireh, Tzemeach, passion, Midos, Chesed, Gvur. And the lowest is Doimim, silence, submission, surrender. Doimim, Yireh Tata. Doimim is below Midas. But in the Shirish, it's higher than Midas. When the Shirish comes out, it's higher than Yosef. But you don't start that way. You start with Midas being higher. You don't say right away, this is higher, because it's not true. It's a process. It's not real, even though it is higher.
Can you give examples that you can serve Hashem in three ways?
I'll try.
Conceptualize.
Let me try. What means to serve Hashem in three ways?
I'm going to smack you in the face, no?
Smack you in the face. You want to know which level that is? That's the issue here. What is Yireh Tata? So you're saying Yireh Tata, somebody smacks you in the face and says, this is what we do, and scares the living daylights out of you, because this is what we do. Is it a high level of Yireh? No, it's a low level of Yireh, but it's Yireh. And you're a daimim. You feel like a daimim. You feel lifeless, dead, silent. That's the most important thing. Silent. Silence. Shamed and silenced. That's what daimim is. Daimim miloshin dam. Very good. You were told you were dumb, and you start believing it. I once had a teacher who, let's put it this way, he didn't have a PhD in pedagogy, and he turned to the class and he said, I'm greater than the Maharal of Prague. He had one goylam and I have 19. And he said, and I'm even greater because his goylam didn't speak, and my 19 goylams actually opened their mouth and talk. Okay? So this was a great, great confidence builder for me and my comrades. Fine. So, Yireh Tata, that's not Yireh Tata. That's Yireh, but it's not Yireh Tata. It's actually Pachad. It's actually Pachad more than Yireh. Yireh Tata has a lot of depth in it, but it's still the lower level of Yireh. It's not Yireh Ilah. What's the difference between these three models, which is basically Yehudah today, Yosef today, and Yehudah in the future? Now when I say the future, I have to say future doesn't mean the future. Future means when you see everything. Future means when all the doors of perception are cleansed and all reality emerges. The Rambam says, I said, Olam Haba is not the future, it's now also. It's a certain state of consciousness. So the future could be now. The Gemara says about the Avis and the Baba Basa, the first period, They saw the world during their lifetime. Gimel, it's a certain perspective. So when I say Yehudah in the future, it's Yehudah now. It's just how you look at it now. It's a certain type of vision. It's a certain set of glasses that gives you a prescription and a perspective to be able to see it in a certain way. So what's the difference between these three pchinas? Midos, we can understand, the middle level. Midos means a person is inspired. What makes me inspired? I love the relationship. Talk about friends. Why are you my friend? Why? Talk about a marriage. Talk about any relationship. A relationship between parents and children, between close friends, between spouses. The relationship is inspiring to me. I love spending time with you. You enrich my life. You enhance my life. You give me pleasure. You give me love. You give me warmth. You give me nurture. You accept me. I love your brilliance. I love your depth. I love your kindness. I love your humor. I love your truthfulness, your integrity. Whatever it is, your personality, your disposition. You're meaningful to me. You're meaningful to me. There's something about you that makes my life meaningful, enjoyable, passionate, exciting. You give life to me. Not dread, but life. Such avodas Hashem is an inspiring avodas Hashem. A Jew who's inspired by his Yiddishkeit. He's inspired by Torah. He's inspired by davening. He's inspired by mitzvahs. He's inspired by Shabbos. He's inspired by his avodas Hashem. He's an inspired, or she is an inspired Jew. Of course, that itself is multifaceted and multidimensional. There's trees and there's bushes and there's a cedar tree. But the common denominator is there's growth, there's vegetation, there's time. You look at the person, there's life. There's no lifelessness. Yirat Hatah is not that. Yirat Hatah is submission. Yirat Hatah is a sense of awe. Yirat Hatah is a sense of commitment, meaning I actually don't feel excited. I'm actually not in the mood. I'm not passionate about it. I don't feel the passion. But I am committed. But now I ask you a question. Why am I committed? Why am I committed? Did somebody smack me in the face? So I have no choice but to be committed. Is that Yirat Hatah? That's not Yirat Hatah. The reason that's not Yirat Hatah is because I'm not really committed. I'm forced. Whenever you're forced into something, you're not in a relationship. Yirat Hatah is a relationship. It's a relationship that we call a lower level of Yira, but it's a relationship. What makes it a relationship? I'll tell you what makes it a relationship. What makes it a relationship is I am committing myself to an inner value that I have. That value may not be something that right now excites me to the point that I have no resistance. I may have resistance. But it's a value that I have. I'm committed to something that is meaningful to me. It's a value, something that I value, and therefore, yes, it requires surrender. Because there may be other emotions or instincts that are contradicting it, that are undermining it. And yira here, let's translate it as fear. Fear of what? Fear of losing my deepest value. Fear of losing that which is very important to me. Fear of losing a relationship that's very precious. Doesn't mean I have no distractions. I have a lot of resistance. I have times that I'm completely not in the mood. It may be a value, not in the mood. I told you once, ask anybody, go around shul this morning and ask people, in the hierarchy of your priorities in life, where does health come into the picture? And everybody will tell you, top 2, 3, right? But it's always top 3. How much time a day do you spend on it? So they'll say once a year, twice a year, right? What happened? They're lying. They're not lying. Because what may be a very deep value, a person will tell you, what's the top value? They'll say, my children. And how much time a day do you spend with your children? 3.5 minutes. When your wife is already finished texting after 9 times, when are you coming home? So what happened? What's your lowest value? Spending time in the office. So why are you there 18 hours a day? It's your lowest value.
This for the children.
Huh?
This for the children.
Okay. Are you? I'm glad to hear. But the point is, sometimes there is resistance, there's other forces. So there's an element of Yirat Hatah where the person makes a commitment, determination. But there's what makes it doimim? What makes it doimim is, I don't feel the passion. I may completely not feel the passion. I know something is right, and therefore I'm committed to it. What makes me know that it's right? That you could discuss. But when I tell somebody, if you don't do this, I will kill you. Or as they used to do this, remember this with the sticks on the finger? Right? I force you into something, and I tell you you're a klutz, you're dumb, you don't matter. You really don't matter. All I need for you is to robotically display obedience so you could fit in, because you're really only a screw in this community. And just to make sure you're screwed in, and when you do that, I'll take care of you. The moment you stick out, you're done. And that's the message. It looks like Yehudah, it looks like Doimim, it has similarities of Doimim, but just like Yeravam is a distortion of Yosef, this is a distortion of Yehudah. And the reason it's a distortion of Yehudah is because you turn the person into a zombie. There's no relationship. There's no yira. What you did is you made the person feel that he doesn't exist. So if you don't exist, there's no choices. If you don't exist, you don't matter.
So I is still there in Yehudah. We said that the I is really not so. The I is still there in Yehudah.
What's Koifenoisa Yachiyamaraitsani? The Rambam says in Hilchos Gerushin that the Koifenoisa is external, because you're trying to bring out the Reitzani, which is real. So the Rambam says the Koifenoisa is external, because really Reitzani, but he himself is not in touch with his own values, what he really believes in. So you need to help him bring out that value. Yeah?
You said that Torah is a commitment to inner values. Is there a difference between this and Yiras Shamayim, or something different?
Well, that's the ultimate value.
So Torah is Yiras Shamayim?
Let's talk about Yiras Shamayim or Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim. What's Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim? I accept the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. But it's an appreciation that Malchus Shamayim is a yoke I want to accept upon myself.
The first has to be an I to be able to accept that.
Well, there has to be an understanding that there's a Malchus Shamayim that's worth accepting a yoke of. Huh? Yeah. When I'm drafted, when I go to the army, when I go into the army to serve the country, not every moment is going to be exciting. Some moments are going to be very, very difficult. But I make a commitment to carry for my country, my duty. What do they say? Duty, country, honor, duty, country. Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim. But there's an appreciation of Malchus Shamayim. Malchus Shamayim is something I want to accept a yoke of. A yoke means sometimes it's a yoke. A yoke means sometimes it's heavy. I'm not flying. I don't feel a fire, a bren. I don't feel it. Instead, I look at myself and I see that I'm doimim. I submit. I acquiesce. I'm dedicated. I'm committed. This is Yira Tata, which is higher. You can't compare. Take the two marriages. There's one guy who comes home, he's on fire with passion to his family, to his wife, to his kids, to his whole home. There's another person who before he walks, also on fire the other way, before he walks into the house, he does a meditation and he says, okay, life is not about me, life is not about me, life is not about me. I'm committed to this marriage, I'm committed to this relationship. You can't compare, right? There's a blend, there's a fire. He may be a great guy, the second guy. Gewaltige person. In many ways, wow. You know, he has a lot of Yetzaharas. He would love to run here, love to run there, love to run there. He would like to be here and there, the ganze Welt. But nonetheless, he has an appreciation of things that are valuable, maybe in his mind, maybe deep in his heart, maybe from life experiences, maybe because of his faith, maybe because he's not dumb. He doesn't want to lose his family, doesn't want to lose his spouse, he loves his children. Doesn't mean every moment he's so, not necessarily. Sometimes our deepest cores and commitments may be concealed, and therefore we have to be driven by a sense of duty and commitment, which is a yoke. And it looks like diamond. And it's Haidah, it's not Yosef, it's Haidah, it's submission. It's a sense of submission, it's a certain yoke, and that's the concept of diamond. It's called Yira Tata, the lower level of Yira. What makes it the lower level of Yira? Because there's a certain alienation. And I have to really tell myself that I'm afraid. It's really about fear. I'm afraid to lose something valuable. I may not feel love. I may not be capable of feeling love. I'm only capable of feeling fear. I'm afraid to lose this. I don't want to lose God. I don't want to lose my soul. I'm afraid to lose such a valuable thing. This has nothing to do with abuse. Nothing to do with abuse. Every real person grows tremendously through this experience. Nothing to do with abuse. This is articulating to people, what do you really care about, and are you ready to sacrifice for it? Because you're not always going to be flying high with what you care about. There are moments and there are moments. And you have to think about long-term. You have a job. Sometimes you love it and sometimes you don't. So why do you go work? Why do you go work? Why don't you not go? Stay in bed. Stay in bed. Because you're abused. It's not called abuse. Because, as you say, you want to be able to support your family. And that means something to you. Am I always excited about the prospects? Am I always excited about how I do it? Am I excited? Of course not. The same is true with Avodas Hashem. And in many ways, some people's Avodas Hashem, their whole life is like this. Their whole life. Now there are people that their whole Avodas Hashem is abusive. What do I mean abusive? Abusive, nobody ever spoke to them about what matters. Nobody ever spoke to them about an inner value. Nobody ever spoke to them what Malchus Shemayim means. All they drove into their hearts was that they're going to burn. That if they don't put on certain tights, and somebody told me they taught them in school, they have pots, and they put in water 2,000 degrees, and the mother takes the children and puts their feet into those pots of water because of the way they dress. This is not a normal way. This is how you teach people to despise Judaism, to despise God forever. This is abusive. Which normal God operates like this? You don't teach this to people. Why? This is not called Yirat. This is not a concept of Yir. This is not about there's no value in this relationship. This is basically the SS. That's what people don't understand. They think they're talking about God. They're displaying a God who is a tyrant, who's very cruel, who's a monster. And it's when people grow up, they suffer. A lot of people suffer from this terribly because of the incompetence of teachers and parents and educators to speak about truth in an elegant, empowering, sophisticated, ennobling, and soulful way. And the worst is when it's associated with Derech HaBaal Shem Tov, which is abuse within abuse. Because the whole Baal Shem Tov came to teach something else. Okay? This is not Yiri law. What's Yiri law? Yiri law is something else. Yiri law is deeper than inspiration. What does it mean it's deeper than inspiration? How can it be deeper than inspiration? Yirei law is what we spoke about. Vayihi kenagin hamenagin, v'tehi alav ruach Hashem. Yirei law, the higher level of awe, is not the higher level of fear. Meaning, one level of fear is you have a gun to my head, and the higher level of fear is you strike fear. It's another way. You say if you don't do it, you're not going to get a good shidduch. That's Yirei law. Yirei tata is you're going to get abused, and you're going to be thrown out of the community. And Yirei law is if you want to get a good shidduch, and you want a father-in-law who's going to support you for 29 years, you better shape up. This is Yirei tata, this is Yirei law. This is sheker v'chazav, nothing to do with a relationship. It creates toxic, neurotic situations. It's not even Yirei Seinshin. It's not even Yirei Seinshin.
I think we all had rabbis that did that, though. No, I mean, I think that's what everybody's thinking. I can tell. You're saying that's not the way. It's the way everybody here was treated. So I don't know where you came from, Mars, but we had to go to yeshiva here on Earth. So
That was a cake from your own.
What would have you gotten for saying this in class?
I never would have said it in class. I couldn't even go to the ask to go to the bathroom in class. I'd rather
Right.
wear purple.
And that's Yirei tata. You're scared to ask to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, here is like, I don't have to come back tomorrow. My mother's not going to send me back to, Yeshiva.
We have our own ways.
We'll find you. We'll find you.
We have our own ways. We have the KGB and Google. We have the
Everybody here
KGB.
is thinking the opposite of what you're saying. I can just tell by looking at the face.
No, it was corrupted. We're saying there's a proper way, it's a proper path. We weren't put on the proper path. You have to reject it.
Especially you. You must have really got it.
What is Yirei Law? What is Yirei Law? Yirei Law is, it's hard to describe in words. Yirei Law means, I don't need to be inspired. I'm not looking for self-actualization and for self-expression. You know why? Because the relationship becomes so profound with God that the I becomes a complete conduit for infinity. And therefore, in the ultimate relationship, there's no sense of I. And therefore, even the sense of passion and inspiration becomes bottled to the doimim. The tzomeach becomes a din in the doimim. Here, the doimim is actually elevated to a place that's beyond the tzomeach. I'm silent, not because I don't care. I'm silent because I am so connected to the truth that there's no I outside of the truth, and therefore the I does not make any noise.
So where's the Yira then? Why is that Yira?
So Yira shouldn't be translated as fear. Yira should be translated as awe. As awe. I remember I went to the Grand Canyon the first time, so I read a lot about it. But when so I knew what I'm going to see. But when I saw it, I remember for like 30 seconds, I lost my standing, my holding, my breath stopped. Why? Not because I understood something, because the image consumed me.
It's beyond.
It overwhelmed me. There was no I. Don't worry, it came back after 30 seconds. It's fine. But what about if you're in that state forever? Moshe, he says, is v'nachnuma. That's why he never speaks. He's kvad peh or kvad loshen. Moshe's doimim. Why is Moshe doimim? Not because he doesn't have what to say, because that which there is to say can't be said. Because there's no I that's separate from God's I. So the human consciousness becomes a musical instrument. I am the music, and the music is me.
So Moshe sees purity in everyone. He just sees purity. So he doesn't have to say
He
anything.
operates there, yeah.
He sees the soul.
On the contrary, all speaking is a compromise of that. Speaking means I am, and I have a certain sense, and I'm going to communicate this. And Moshe is completely one with a higher truth. He's just a conduit. There's a halach in Yeridea, Aidi de Tarid lemivla, loy polit. When you're absorbing, you can't emit. If you're listening to a shir and you're trying to grasp every word, and then somebody says, what did he say? What did shh, shh. Why shh? No, what did he say? You can't speak now. Because every word, even if it's about the shir, is a distraction. What is it a distraction of? It's a distraction of your antennas absorbing to the point that you don't exist then. Now, a perpetual state of that relationship means not that the person doesn't exist. The person exists so profoundly that their existence doesn't have to be. To be or to be not. They exist so profoundly that the be not is a far truer form of existence. They exist so profoundly that they don't have to be separate, and therefore they don't have to stand up for their separateness, because they're completely comfortable with being not, because their I is an expression of infinity. Now this can only happen if you trust somebody completely. In other words, it has to happen with God. It has to happen with God. So here is now one of the big questions. And it's a question today. Do you put all your eggs in one basket? What do you say? Meaning, do you trust somebody or something all the way? Do you put your whole soul in one basket? Or you say, no, you can get abused. Keep a distance. Always remain objective. Be inspired by people, but remain critical. Remain detached. Is there ever a point that you surrender everything, not just 50%?
Story to your friend Posner. Was that his name? Posner with the
Aver.
With the Aver.
So I want to tell you an interesting experience. There was a Jew, Chaim Potak. And he rings a bell for anybody?
Yeah.
The Chosen. My name is Ashalev. The Book of Light. Chaim Potak was a personality. So he's interviewed by Ted Koppel. Anybody knows who Ted Koppel is?
Yes.
From the great Kabbalists of our generation.
Not exactly.
He transferred truth.
So Chaim Potek is interviewed by Ted Koppel, and I listened to the interview years ago, and he's interviewing Chaim Potek about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Chaim Potek is a scholar of Hasidism, of mysticism, a conservative rabbi, a novelist. He says, did you ever meet him? He says, I chose not to. I chose not to. I would go to his fabrengens a lot, his gatherings. I chose not to go into his room to meet him. He said, why not? He tells Ted Koppel, I knew about his charisma and his wisdom, and I was afraid I will lose my subjectivity. And he needed a critic. He needed somebody who will be on the outside and say, I'm not consumed by you. And if I would go in, that might have ended. I wouldn't be objective about it. So I kept a distance. Right? It's a very, very interesting remark. I want to remain objective. To remain objective, you never put your eggs in one basket. Kabdeyu, v'chashdeyu. I mean, you have to be cynical and negative, but always question. Always say, wait. A cult, not a cult. For real, not for real. In a year from now, will he backstab me and my family? And there's a reason for this. We all know about people who sell their souls to gurus, you'll forgive me, to certain rebbes, rabbis, tzaddikim, quote unquote, teachers, mystics, leaders. And what do? At a moment of truth, they will throw you under the train, under the bus, consciously or unconsciously, maliciously or inadvertently, knowing what they do, or even worse, clueless, and your heart is ripped out and you're left with nothing. And then 2 years later, a new guru gets you, and you sell your soul again, and they rip your heart out, and you do it another 5, 6, 7 times, and then you say, you know what, I trust nobody ever again. And even when you come to Likud Torah, you sit like this for many months, and everything, you always ask yourself, where's he going? What is this going to do? What's the objective? What's the, etc. All the intelligent people here, what goes through your mind at certain times, I don't have to elaborate. So you shouldn't think that I read anybody's mind, but I read my own mind. Right? I want to know if Chaim Potek is right or not right. I want to know. Is Chaim Potek, I understand Chaim Potek very well. Is he right or wrong?
It's a valid
He
point.
had fears.
It's a valid point.
So let me tell you. Chaim Potek is 100% right,
People.
and Chaim Potek is 100% wrong. Depends who you're talking about. Chaim Potek is 100% right. You live in a world where you have to be very critical. Because if not, if you become subjectively consumed by actors, and by charlatans, and by con artists, and even by good-meaning people, but they're clueless. They don't know what you need. They may mean well. There may be a leader or a rabbi who may mean well, but he can destroy you because he'll give you stupid advice that you accept. And it's not for you. It's not for you. It's not for your kids. He doesn't know you, doesn't appreciate, doesn't respect you. He may be a nice guy, but it's not. Not every person who's nice is Rabban Shel Kol Bnei HaGoyla. And not everybody who does Daf Yomi and does some programs and knows a few Blat Gemara Baal Peh becomes an expert on what a generation needs. Maybe this is heresy. Not everybody who knows Tosfos has his finger on the pulse of a generation. The Gemara says, "Kol Talmid Chacham she'ein bo das nevela toiva himenu." Talmid Chacham who has no das, a corpse of an animal is better than him. So the Yefei Torah says, why? Say he's like a nevela. He says, at least a nevela stays in one place. He walks around. Sometimes you have a person ein bo das. Got it. That's Chaim Potek's point. Chaim Potek says, I will not give that up. But now, I would dare to ask Chaim Potek a question. My brother asked him this question publicly when he spoke about this. So I'm paraphrasing my brother. And I want you to understand the question with sensitivity. Don't understand it in terms of Jewish politics, like we like to classify everything with politics. Understand with sensitivity. So, Mr. Wood, I want to ask you a question. If you were the generation that left Yetzias Mitzrayim, and Moshe Rabbeinu said, we're going to go to Har Sinai, and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. By Yom HaShlishi, on the third day, God is going to come down. And you know, once God comes down, you will not be able to be objective about the life, about creation, about the universe, and about Torah. Would Chaim Potok say, I'm not going to stand at Maamer Har Sinai, because somebody has to remain objective. Somebody has to say, maybe God doesn't exist. Maybe Torah is a myth. It's healthy. It's healthy. Maybe. Would Chaim Potok be that man? And number two, would you think it's an intelligent decision to make?
Maybe it's a sacrifice.
Maybe. Or maybe it's a tipshus. Why? Because if it's truth, it's true. So here is now where I'm going to argue with Chaim Potok after displaying how much I like what he said on one level. What's the point of objectivity? What's the point of objectivity? Objectivity is something to worship? Sure. Then it's the worst objectivity. The point of objectivity is to find truth. And if when you find truth, you refuse to accept it because I remain objective, you are the most subjective, non-objective person that exists in the world. Because when you found it, you deny it because you worship your objectivity. God is your objectivity for you is a god. It's an idol. You're not objective. You are paralyzed by your objectivity. You will remain stuck in your objectivity, and therefore you're not capable of losing yourself, even in a moment when you should lose yourself, because you recognize that it's truth. As long as you don't recognize that it's true, be critical. Because if not, you could be abused. But is there a point in life where you could see that you're dealing here with something that will never abuse you, something that can't abuse you? For example, if a person like Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Hashalom is really v'nachnu ma, meaning a person, there's no I, you're a conduit, by that you won't be abused. And if I don't put all my eggs in that basket, then what do? I deprive myself from a relationship for real. Why? Because, remember, which egg don't you put in the basket? Which egg do you hold back? The most important one. The one that determines what's true or not. The one that has your soul. The one that's helping you hold back, and you know holding back is harder than not holding back, right? So your deepest part is not in the relationship. So what you did was, in the name of objectivity, you remain detached forever from truth. And all you can do is sit back and say, hooray, 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 I'm objective.
Chaim Potok was really saying, would you say he was saying Liberation? Was he saying what this is what your Nevat says?
I think Chaim Potok was saying Mi Berosh. Mi Berosh.
What did he answer?
What did he answer your brother?
If he would have been at Maamer Har Sinai?
What did he answer your brother? He answered
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. My brother just told me right after that. It was many years ago. He said it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question. You see, in our world, in our society, there's so much abuse happening, and so many innocent people who were led down a wrong path, that the sophisticated ones among us become jaded. And then, what you do is, you're not capable of Yirei law. You remain paralyzed by your objectivity and therefore by your distance because of fear. And you call it rationality. It's not rationality. It's paralysis. It's not rationality. Objectivity has a destination. The destination is, I want truth. That's the destination. You have this with many scientists. In the name of objectivity, they will deny the obvious. Because objectivity is not a journey. That is the destination. Destination is I remain detached, I remain above, and I will invest everything in making sure that we can't discover truth. But what if there is? What if there is? So some argue there's no such a thing as truth. But what if there is? Which is what Maamer Har Sinai was all about. Go there. You'll become subjective. So if you consider yourself a Meshuggah and you don't have the mind to distinguish, okay. But at some point you have to tell yourself, I searched and searched and searched, I scrutinized. This is emes. If it's emes, surrender. Have the courage to surrender. V'nachnu ma.
Sinai is very scientific, but a Rebbe is.
I got it.
It's a Rebbe that lets
You
you
want to
grow.
surrender to Har Sinai, but not everyone wants to surrender
Okay,
to.
fine. Okay.
It's more glamorous than truth seeking to find the truth.
So the truth is not.
Moshe Rabbeinu was also a Rebbe.
Avi Rubenfeld, the shir, was he wants to remain
Krieger.
Maybe he's smart. Maybe you're dumb and he's smart.
So come back to a minute to Yeratata. Go ahead. Thank you very much. So Yeratata, I think of the way you described it as going on a diet.
Yes.
You're committed to it.
Yes. And it's hard.
You're committed to it. You're in it. It's not just fear. It's a commitment to something deeper. However, there's two reasons. Let's say I choose to go on a diet. One is because I have faith in the idea that I've been told that otherwise my risk of heart disease is higher, diabetes. So I have faith. I may not feel that. I might not ever be able to relate to that, but it's based on a sort of a blind faith. The other, because at some level, I remember the times before in my life that I did the diet and I really, really felt better. I have some inchoate idea in my mind that there was a gishma.
Right.
So in certain Yeratata, there's also a little bit of the midos, because I remember that I felt, so to speak, inspired.
Some inspiration.
And at other times, it's just based on.
It's just submission. It's horrible. It's that guy who's maybe a stroke victim who needs therapy.
No, so this is very, very insightful in terms of when you're dealing with people in terms of behavioral change like diet, because you're telling them to do this Yeratata. So either you can convince them, which often you can't. They
Right.
show them all the papers and the books.
They have to trust.
Unless they once felt it. So the point is, even in Yehudah, I think for Yehudah to develop, he had to have felt at some point a Yosef.
Right.
Otherwise, it's going to be hard for him to remain Yehudah.
Right. Right. I want to read you an email I received from somebody, a therapist from Williamsburg, or near Williamsburg, who listened to some of the shiurim on this Maamer, and he wrote me an email about an experience he had that I thought would be helpful to illustrate one of the main points here in the Maamer that we want to summarize here today, Be'ezer Hashem. I'm going to read it, it's a long email, but I'm going to read it almost verbatim. It basically tells a story. I once had a client. He was a religious man. He was married with a large family. And he told me, this is the therapist from Williamsburg, he told me that he wanted to throw everything away, buy a motorcycle, and move alone to some far country and start all over again. He was very serious about this. He already told his wife about his plans, leaving the family, abandoning the kids. He already bought a motorcycle. He already spent time in different interesting places to feel it out, feel what it is to be a real free, uninhibited man. Anybody here with these issues? Motorcycle. Okay, but not running away yet. Okay. You have a motorcycle. And you come here with your motorcycle.
That's right.
Okay.
This was his running away.
So the therapist writes to me, when he came to me, what do you think? You want to know if he would still put on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin? What do you want to know? If he would use a Hadas Shir Chazonish, what do you think? You'll take a guess. When he came to me, he had been struggling with the idea for leaving over a year. It was a typical struggle between what I feel I want to do and what I feel I have to do. What I feel I want to do is, I don't want to be married, I don't want to have kids, I don't want to be in a religious community, I don't want to be confined, I don't want to be oppressed, I don't want anybody to tell me what to do. This is what I feel I have to do. This is what I have to do. I have responsibility to my wife, to my kids, to my God, to my community. One of the first questions I as a therapist asked him was, what's holding you back? It's already a year and you have a motorcycle. Why don't you just leave? You told your wife already. So he went into a tirade about telling me how sick and tired he is of living his whole life based on what he has to do versus on what he wants to do. So I asked him again, so you're sick and tired, so what's holding you back? Why don't you just do it? He gave me a puzzled look, and for 6 months we spent time exploring this question. The question of what's holding you back. Just do it. In the end, he discovered a ton of values that he'd never spoke about. He had a love for his children. He had gratitude to his wife. He had a desire not to hurt his innocent wife because she was very innocent. He had a desire to have meaningful human connections. He had a desire to see himself as a giving person and other values. And they all made him decide to stay with the family. He did have to move far away from his community and completely change his style of Yiddishkeit, which was not working for him. In this scenario, his initial conflict was between obedience, responsibility, versus self-actualization. One voice in him said, become your own person, have fun, do what you want to do. Another voice in him said, you got to be home at 6 o'clock and do homework and prepare Dvar Torah for Shabbos. Everyone he spoke to before he came to therapy, his Rav, his Rabbi, his wife, himself, they all framed the conflict as a choice between two mutually exclusive options. One option is self-expression, one option is obedience and self-abnegation. By asking him what was holding him back, instead of harping on his responsibility, he was able to notice that there was something holding him back that had nothing to do with obedience. And that on a deeper level, his self-actualization lay in letting go of his dream to run away from his family with a motorcycle and in being obedient and responsible to his own inner values. So his whole life, everybody forced on him a split. The split was, will you either be you, or are you going to sell your soul to the community, to the religion, to the family, to the God, to the rabbis, to the Hasidus, whatever, to the whatever it is, his whole life, and he was sick and tired of it. When am I going to become me? I understood this, and therefore the therapist says, I stopped talking about that. I wanted to know what's holding him back. Like, why aren't you at peace with this decision? Is it all because you're frightened of society? Or maybe there are voices in you that you need to become familiar with. And he basically realized that there was something beyond obedience to outer forces. There was a voice of obedience to himself, but not to his outer self, to his inner self. I find, in my experience, that people come into therapy like this all the time. And when you ask them what their deepest desires are, they look at you like you're from Mars. Nobody addresses with people their deeper desires. What are their deepest values? What are their deepest priorities? What do they really care about? But these values and deepest desires are probably the most practical and concrete connection that we have to ourselves, to our own truth in the world of machshava. On a practical level, we're not teaching people to explore what's really important to them, what they really value. Some people even feel that it's kfira, it's heresy to entertain such thoughts. Imagine if our education system helped people explore their true values. That's the letter. באמצע השיר כבר? אפילו לא גמור. זה בשביל התרפיסט. אני אגיד לו שנתת לו מחיית כפיים.
לא יכול לספק.
לא יוכל לספק. Okay. I thought this was a very valuable insight.
Just read the last line again.
About education?
Yes.
Oh, that's where he came to life. On a practical level, we're not teaching our children, we're not teaching people to explore what's really important to them, what they really value, who they really are. Some people even feel that it's heresy to entertain such thoughts. Imagine if our education system helped people explore their true values.
So as profound as it is, but at the end of the day, if you go back to what we were saying Friday, really what he gained at the end was still Yeratata.
Right. Exactly. This is the lowest level of this Maamer. This experience, which is very valuable, and let's face it, you could live your whole life by this paradigm. And it's a good life, it's a meaningful life, it's a valuable life, it's a precious life, and it has great moments of joy as well. This is the lowest level of this Maamer. I'm calling it lowest, it's not low at all. It's the paradigm of Yehudah pre-Yosef. It's the paradigm of Yehudah Bizman Hazeh below Yosef. It's not a life where I am necessarily always, or even often, feeling this tremendous passion. Now I'll use a metaphor that Dr. Michel gave on Friday. From, I guess, his experience with people, it's called dieting. He says, most dieting goes into yiratata. There's no way that a person who has to go on a diet is always passionate about his diet. And those of us who struggle with food addiction, or just food in generally, we don't like calling it an addiction, but it's usually more or less one of the, similar to it at least. Even if you're committed to it, right? What are you committed to? So when you come to your breakfast, to your lunch, your supper, there's certain things you will not touch. I'm talking about people who are doing it, not people who are committing to it every day anew. You know, after the next bar mitzvah, they start the diet. After the next chasen, after Shara Brachas is over. We're talking about people who committed to it. It's not like they're so passionate about their choices that they absolutely have no inclination in the other direction. No, what's required is a certain form of obedience, a certain form of doimim, a form of surrender, of submission, where you have to tell yourself, I know I would love to eat this, but I'm not going to. But why am I not going to? Because I'm afraid of my wife? Because I'm afraid of the community? Because I'm going to be excommunicated? On the contrary, if I want to be part of the community, I should actually weigh much more and I'll fit in much better. I should eat everything on the table and it would be socially much more acceptable. I shouldn't stop anything. On the contrary, the social norm is just, to take it all in. So what is causing this person to be in a state of surrender? It's not an outside alien force that's imposing itself upon him. It's rather, I would say, a commitment to an inner value. The inner value may be something simple. I want to feel better. I want to have more energy. I want to live longer. I want to be able to come home and spend time with my children and my wife. I want to be able to accomplish more. I know the consequences. I know where I was 6 months ago. I know where I was 2 years ago. I felt lethargic, heavy. I was in a bad mood. I was angry. I was not interested in life, because we know what we eat affects our moods very, very profoundly. Everybody knows that, probably. And therefore, it's a commitment to an inner value. It's not always an outer value, meaning externally, I may revolt against it, and sometimes I'm going to cheat. Enough. Remember, the unhealthier the food is, the better it looks. It's just how God made it. Somehow lettuce never has that same look like ice cream. I don't know why. Somehow cheesecake invites you. I never saw kale inviting you. Emotionally, it doesn't tell you, hey, come into me. Ingest me into your bloodstream and I'll be here for you forever. Cheesecake tells that to you. Cheesecake has this romantic, it's like roses, for women. Cheesecake for men is like red roses or lilies for women. It has this look. It tells you, bring me into your system and I will remain your best friend forever. At least for 20 minutes till you have to go to the bathroom.
You're really waxing poetic about this.
I'm very poetic. Listen, people...
Only experience can bring you to that level.
Yes. Huh? Depends which cheesecake. You mean if there's marble inside? What do you mean? You want to explain to us? What a cheesecake is a mitzvah? That's the first time I hear. Huh? Cheesecake? Oh, Shavuos a mitzvah? Ramah says machale chalav. I don't know that cheesecake. Machale chalav, you could be yotze with an ounce of milk. take a coffee, you put in an ounce of milk into your coffee, you were yotze ma'achale chalav on Shavuos. A spoon of cheesecake, you were yotze ma'achale chalav on Shavuos. The Ramah didn't even have a musig of something called blintzalach and eggplant parmesans and cheesecakes and macaroni with cheese and pastas with cheese, etc., etc.
But we're Hasidim.
The Baal Shem Tov also didn't have a concept of this.
Europe didn't have food either.
Association between Hasidim and unhealthy foods is one of the great distortions of contemporary religious Hasidic history. Trust me. Bechlal, the association between Jewish religion and food obsession, one of the great distortions of modern Jewish religion. You should just know that. The Magen Avram writes in Hilchos Shabbos that there's an inyan to be toyim on Erev Shabbos mikol tafshel v'tafshel. So I once saw a guy in a particular place. There was in hotels they have toyameha rooms. Toyameha rooms means before Shabbos they have more food than they're going to have a whole weekend. So a guy was going mamish from this. So I said, you won't be able to eat tonight. He says, the Magen Avram. You have to be toyim mikol tafshel. So by the Magen Avram, there were maybe 2 tafshilim Friday night, and they were tiny. So he was tying from this, he was tying from this. Magen Avram didn't know that there's going to be approximately 39 tafshilim just for the first course. 39 dips just for the first course. Okay, fine, but let's not get too derailed over here. So this is all a state, these are all examples, of course. He's not talking about food or motorcycles, but they're all metaphors and symbolic of the concept of daimim. Why is this so important? Because people make the mistake and they think that daimim means abuse. People think that Kabbalah's oil malchus shamayim means a right to oppress people in the name of God. But this is a pedagogical mistake, and it's a Jewish mistake. That's not what daimim means. That's not what surrender means. That's not what moide manachnu lach means. It's not what moide ani means. It's not what Yehudah means. It means I surrender various voices, forces, instincts, inclinations, addictions, dispositions that undermine what is a true value. Now, the definition of a true value, Judaism has a lot to say about that, but it has nothing to do with oppressing who you are. I would say it has much more to do with actually expressing what is most meaningful about you and was most important for you in your life. That is why, right, when a yeshiva bacher once came to me and he said, he was very turned off. I got some mice, I'm not going to get into details, but he said that his whole education, the way it worked was, whenever he was in school and his teacher would say, you have to do this, or his father would say, you have to do this, and he says they were always in a bad mood. They were in a very bad mood. And he would turn to his father, and he would say, or his teacher, and he would say, what's the logic? What's the logic behind this? And you know, kids are very smart, so they always get you. They get you when you're being illogical, right? What's the logic? And they would get even more angry, and they said, I don't have to tell you the logic. This is what you have to do. They'd say, but why? Why do you want the class to do this? Like, what's the benefit? It's just wasting everybody's time. And he would always use the same words. Kabbalah's oil. Kabbalah's oil. Kabbalah's oil are 2 majestic words of Judaism. But what happened to him was this. By using those 2 words, Kabbalah's oil, I want you to understand the mistake this person made. He probably did not do it intentionally. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But he made a pedagogical, historic mistake. He made this boy believe that Kabbalah's oil means whenever something doesn't make sense and is actually stupid, and it's just I'm in a bad mood and I can't get off my high horse, and it's embarrassing for me to say I made a terrible mistake, and my temper is really burning, and I don't know how to get off the mountain and climb down gracefully, so the 2 words I introduce into the vocabulary are Kabbalah's oil. Kabbalah's oil is an excuse for telling people to do what doesn't make sense to them or to me, and make it still sound holy and valuable. I told the teacher, I said, it's a terrible crime what you're doing, and I'll tell you why. The word Kabbalah Sel comes from Mishnayos Masechta Brachas. Gedei sheyekabel alav oil malchus shamayim tchila. Kabbalah soil has 2 words after that. Malchus shamayim. Accepting the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. This means not when something is a mishagas, you should do it because I said you should do it. And the reason you have to do it is because Kabbalah also his whole life, whenever he hears the word Kabbalah Malchus Shabbat, what does it mean? It means God is in a bad mood, wants me to do it for no reason but just to crush me, to show me who's boss. How exciting can you be about such a life? How exciting, how meaningful can that be? The word is not exciting, but how meaningful can it be? Kabbalah Malchus Shamayim is really a very profound idea. It's the oil of Malchus Shamayim. It's not the oil of a person with a bad temper who can't control himself and therefore lost it, and instead of saying, I'm sorry, will drive me crazy to obey him at all expenses. Malchus Shamayim is a whole different oil. It's the oil of somebody who created you, somebody who loves you, somebody who wants you to be successful, somebody who wants you to optimize your life, somebody who wants you to maximize your potential, somebody who wants you to live life to the fullest, somebody who wants you to be happy physically and spiritually. And yes, he creates a yoke on you, not unlike a personal trainer. Where's Efashmon? He went to train somebody. Okay, not unlike you're also a personal trainer?
No, but it's okay.
Maybe one day.
One day I'm working on it.
Not unlike a personal trainer who sits with you in the gym and puts a yoke and says another push-up and another, I'm dying. No. So you're going to say he's cruel? So why are you paying him? Why in the world are you paying somebody to torture you? Which is a good question. It's a good question. The answer is, I'm paying him, people will say, because he's bringing out the best in me, because if not, I'll be lazy. Oh, that's good abgeteicht. Because if not, I'll be lazy. So is your greatest value laziness? Or is your greatest value productivity, health, self-actualization? This doesn't mean I'm in the mood. This means sometimes I need somebody to schlep me out of bed and say, we're doing it. I don't want. Tough luck. But it's a good tough luck. There has the chiluk. You understand the difference? It's two different systems. It's the same oisius. You don't always do what you want to do. But what do I hear in that? Some kids hear, you don't always do what you want to do because you don't matter. Because you don't exist. Because I don't care for you. I step on you. That's wrong. That's immoral. That's not Jewish. It's not Torah. It's against what God thinks about people and about humanity and about individuals. The doimim here is yiratata. Yiratata means a lower level of yira. Why is it such a low level of yira? It's a low level of yira because I have to surrender. What do I have to surrender? A whole bunch of stuff I have to surrender. Whatever it may be. But we all have forces that undermine our inner value. We may even not be conscious of it sometimes. So Kabbalah Soil has two words at the end. Not just a yoke. I take a washing machine, I put it on your shoulders, and I say, walk around with a washing machine on your shoulders. Why? Kabbalah Soil. Kabbalah Soil. Kabbalah Soil Malchus Shamayim. Aha, it's a yoke of Malchus Shamayim. It's a different Malchus. Malchus Shalchai, it's a whole different Malchus. That's why you can't discuss with children Kabbalah Soil if you don't first discuss with them God. If you don't first teach them about God, you can't teach about Kabbalah Soil. Emunah precedes Kabbalah Soil Malchus Shamayim. Because if they don't understand what Malchus Shamayim is, then Kabbalah Soil just becomes an exercise in volatile, irresponsible, and disrespectful behavior towards people and towards children and towards your subjects, people who are under you.
So what song, what words are good to say? I mean, I know the song, can't always get what you want, but I don't know another song to say to a kid who's...
No, a child needs this. Doimim is, we all need it. Everyone needs it. How could you live without this? How could you live if your only philosophy in life is I do only what I'm completely passionate about this moment? Who's going to wake up in the morning? Not nobody. I mean, there's people here who wake up early. Not nobody, but who's going to wake up? Who's going to do anything? A person must have an element of submission. Yeah. A Yid came to a Rav once. He says, "Ich will a get." The Rav said, "Wer will nicht?" This Chacham decides he wants to get, okay, we all know, fine. Everyone has moments. Everybody's going to say that they're on fire 24 hours a day. Okay, it's good he's sleeping. Oh, you're welcome.
Almost there.
It's early in the game yet.
Fine, good morning. Shine. It's Andekt America. You're the only person who has marital problems nobody in the world has. We all know. Fine. People think their problems are the worst in the world. There's no life without commitment. There's no life that's worth living because we're not saints. We're not always operating on a level of consciousness where there's transparency, where there's no blockages, where there's no obstacles, where there's no trauma, where there's no issues, where there's no luggage, where there's no superficiality, where there's no other fears and insecurities and instincts that come in. And this is where the person has to have an element of yiratata, which means the lower level of fear or the lower level of awe. It's not such a low level, I'm telling you. It's a pretty high level. It's pretty lofty and dignified. Relative to the next level, it's called yiratata. Let's now climb up the ladder. As we climb up the ladder, we come from doimim to tzemeach. That is the model of Yosef. What is the model of Yosef? Model of Yosef is self-actualization in a very conscious and revealed way. Because really, as I mentioned, the doimim, the yiratata, is also a very deep element of self-actualization. But I may not always be aware of it. I may not be conscious of it. And sometimes it takes years. You have to fight for yourself. And we all know, some of us struggle our whole life with certain instincts that you can't get rid of. And what about if a person, right, is incapable of being in touch with the emotion that can inspire his move? Let's say somebody, I'll give maybe a dramatic example. If somebody has a crush on somebody, and they know it's not going to take them to good places. They know it, but they don't feel it. And they may have to fight for months and for years, usually for months, maybe not for years, but sometimes for years, but for months, doing opposite of what they feel. And it's all about doimim. And it's very, very noble, and it's sometimes very sad. I mean, I have seen people who made sacrifices in life, and there was no way that they can feel the value of what they're doing. All they had was knowledge. They had knowledge, and they had experience of the past. And they had good people advising them, or one good person advising them, not taking advantage and abusing them. But one cannot fail to demonstrate such deep respect and awe to people who make such decisions, people who abandon certain relationships that they have been entrenched in. It's awe-inspiring. It's sometimes awe-inspiring because of how much doimim there is over there. It's not semeach. They don't feel the growth. It's like a nisayon of the Akedah. It's mamish like a nisayon of the Akedah. But they're not doing it because of abuse. It's not abuse. It's not abuse. It's because of a commitment to what they know or feel or believe is ultimately the real truth. The truth of life, the truth of their existence, the truth of God, the truth of what they really cherish. I don't call that abuse. People who associate doimim with abuse are making a very bad mistake in education, and it costs many victims. Very important to understand. But it's not semeach. Semeach is Yosef's model. Tzadik hatama yifrach keres balvonin yizge. This is what he calls here Ava v'yira versus bittul. Ava v'yira means yira here in the sense of passion. Ava, passion. There's emotion, there's passion, there's feeling, there's experience, there's a sense of beauty, there's a real sense of self-actualization. This is called, you're in a romance with God. You're in a romance with God. Your avodas Hashem is full of passion. Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev, the morning of Sukkot, he waited a whole night to be able to bench on the esrog, and the moment sun rises, and Yitzchak of Barditchev sees the esrog, and he jumps for it. He doesn't realize, of course, that there's a glass door separating his hands from the esrog, and his hand goes right through the glass. He takes his esrog, and he wonders why the whole esrog becomes red. Why a yellow esrog suddenly turned into red. Okay. I don't have that feeling, Alois HaShachar Sukkot. I mean, I like shaking the lulav of an esrog, it's exciting and so on and so forth, but if there's a glass door, I'm not going to break the glass. But Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev, he was in a romance with God. He once went to one of the other tzaddikim, I think it was Baruch al-Mezhebush, and we're going to soon be by the Barditchev. So But it was full of hispilus. He was full of emotion. I think it was the Rebbe Baruchel of Mezhebush, the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. So he asked if he could stay with him Shabbos. So he said you could stay, but without unspringen and untanzen, without you jumping and dancing. If you make a commitment, it's good. So he says, no problem, he made a commitment. Came Shabbos by the tish, by the meal. So somebody came out with fish, plate of fish, one of the people. They turn to the Baditcher Yeravam and they say, wilt a stickel fish? You want a piece of fish? He jumps up, he says, Fish will ich? Fish will ich? Kus will ich? Ich will Kus, ich will Göttlichkeit. And he jumps up on the table and he starts dancing. Fish will ich? Kus will ich? Ain't safe, I don't want fish. But the whole table, the whole place turns over. But Tzai Shabbos, he goes into the Rebbe and he asks Mechila. He asks Mechila for what he did. He says, no, it was perfect. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't prepared for before Shabbos. You made a commitment as good, it was perfect. Okay, so this is the Baditcher. But it represents a concept. There's a person, we all know sometimes you're in a relationship, and you are very excited about it. And you don't come to the Rav and start asking for ways out, and you don't have to tell yourself this is the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do, but I'm crazy about it too. I'm in love. I'm emotionally inspired. I'm enthusiastic. I feel the growth. Sometimes you're in exercise and you don't have to force yourself. There's a point where you're just flying, right? People who jog and they talk about the high. Anybody knows about these things? They talk about the high. They're not forcing themselves. They look forward to it. This is where they express themselves. The same is true in terms of ruchnius, lahavdul. The same is true in terms of avodas Hashem. The same is true in terms of some people daven, and for them davening is the moment they wait for the day. It's like a highlight.
Isn't there certain things with certain ages?
Yeah, that's why Yosef and Yehudah are not two people. They're two people in each person. Sometimes in one thing you're like this, and in one thing like this. Sometimes one day you're this, and one day you're that. It's not either or.
Explain for children, sometimes you can only do it.
You're right. And that's why, in the beginning of Jewish history, before Yosef is the king, first Yehudah is the king. Then it goes to Yosef. Then it goes back to Yehudah. How do we start over the day? Moida ani lefanecha. Moida is Yehudah. How do you start off davening? Hoidu Lashem kiru b'shmoi. That's Yehudah. But then, as he says, you go up and davening. You have Psukkah de Zimra. He mentioned Psukkah de Zimra here, yeah. Versus Shemon Esrei, right? Where did he mention Psukkah de Zimra? He didn't mention Psukkah de Zimra. He mentioned Tefillah. Hishtachavoyah sheb'shmona esrei. You start off with Moidani. You start off with Hoidu. You go through the songs of Psukkah de Zimra, which is the Bechina of Yosef, and you end off with Shemona Esrei, where you bow down, which is silent, called the Mamadaka, which is a doimim. But that's a doimim that's deeper than Psukkah de Zimra, not lower than Psukkah de Zimra. So you start off with doimim sometimes. You're right. My 3-year-old wants to cross the street or wants to play with a knife. I can't start explaining to him how self-actualization demands that you don't walk into Forshay when there's a car, right? You have to chap him by his hand. But it's not called abuse. It's called being a responsible, normal, moral parent, not being dysfunctional, crazy, and subjecting your child to danger. But the same is true when I teach my child about avodas Hashem. It's not chas v'shalom abuse. It's a process of education where I want to help a person come to appreciate who they really are, what their greatest values are, and what would be their greatest path for self-actualization as well, and for connecting to truth. So now you come from Yirat Hatah, you come to Midas, what he calls from Malchus to Midas, from Bittul to Ava V'yira, from Doimim to Tzemeach, and Tzemeach is higher than Doimim, and the Doimim is fueled from the Tzemeach. The offer is lower than the Tzemeach. In other words, the Doimim must get its nurture from Tzemeach. The reason you go out in the morning to train with him, the reason you don't need that cheesecake is because once in a while you are inspired. If you're never inspired, it won't be able to exist. Once in a while you have an awareness of what feels good, what is good, and that allows you to sustain yourself even in moments when you don't feel it. That's where the daimim is makabel from the tzemeach. So this is Yosef higher than Yehudah. And there's a model in Jewish history. There's the time in Jewish history when Yosef has to be the king. Yosef is higher. Yehudah is makabel from Yosef. Vayigash, I love Yehudah, vayema bi adonai. Yosef is the king. Yosef is the leader. That's the way to go. Not that there's no room for Yehudah. Of course there's room for Yehudah. And sometimes you even have to start off with Yehudah. That depends. That depends on the matzav. Because if not, I won't get out of bed. I have to say Moida Ani, Moida, Doimim, Moida. Moida means submission, gratitude. Moida. Hoidu Lashem. Sometimes when you start Hoidu, the heart is not there. That's why you have to start with Hoidu. The Balatanya says this about Hoidu. I'm not making this shidduch. He says Moida, he says Hoidu, and then later you get into a moment of Zimra. For some people, the whole davening is Hoidu. And by the way, this doesn't mean a davening that is meaningless. This is a very meaningful davening. Hoidu is not meaningless. It's very meaningful. It just means that my heart still has different struggles, which is fine. Which is fine. It's not like the Jew came to the chayz of the Lublin and he said he has machshava zaras during davening. And the Lublina said it's not that you have machshava zaras during davening, it's that you're davening during your machshava zaras. It's a different experience.
And your passion being fueled by the domain is mizmar l'soda.
Right.
The Zimra Staki emerging from
exactly. Mizmar l'soda, the mizmar that comes from Taida. And we spoke the previous Maamer Rani b'simcha about Ivdu as Hashem b'simcha, after the boil of fun of Bernana, etc. The whole Psukkah de Zimra is really a meditation.
I think that was with Zimra.
The whole Psukkah de Zimra is really a meditation on making God relevant and real so that you should get excited about it. You're impressed by the snow, you're impressed by the rain, you're impressed by the leaves, you're impressed by the trees. So Psukkah de Zimra will identify all that with divine energy. It's really a meditation on lifting up the person in the B'china of Yosef. Now comes Shemona Esrei.
Superficial things that stays by doing them all the life of people.
Sometimes our whole life is done. Sometimes there's elements of our life that we remain in a state of daimim, in a state of commitment. Sometimes people have certain challenges or cravings that are very, very toxic and they cannot get rid of them. They fight their whole life. And it's a very powerful life. There's a certain depth in these people that you will not find by anybody, because every day they make sacrifices. And when you make sacrifices for something, you own it like nobody else. Remember, that which you don't sacrifice for, you don't own. It's a gift. That which you fight for is yours. So people who make sacrifices for certain truths, those truths are theirs more than other people. So there's something in daimim that is very, very unique. That's still not the chiddush of the Maamer. We still have to get to the punchline. I'm going to do this fast. B'li Ezer Hashem, b'li neder. We now come from Yosef to the next Yehudah. In other words, as we morph from the kingship of Yosef to Malchus Beis David, from Yosef to Mashiach, this is the daimim that's higher than Semeach. What is the daimim that's higher than Semeach? That's a different daimim. This is not the daimim that lacks growth because I don't feel the self-actualization. It's rather the other way. I don't feel the self-actualization because the self has become one with the truth. The self is silent not because the self feels repressed. It's because the self has reached the ultimate self. And when the self has reached the ultimate self, Vayihi kenagen hamenagen, v'tihi alav ruach Hashem. When the I becomes the violin, when the I becomes the conduit for the truth, so the self does not need self-actualization to be self-actualized, because there's no distance between the self and the ultimate truth. That's the concept of what Shemona Esrei represents, and that's why suddenly Shemona Esrei we go silent. Psukkah de Zimra, the halacha says, should be B'shira v'Zimra, with koilus. Birchas Krishma should be B'kol Ram. Shemona Esrei is the highlight of davening. Dalif Ne'miyat Ha'imid. This is where people should really get excited. You go to a Karlin shul, you ever go to Karlin? You ever hear davening in Karlin? You never heard? Screaming a whole davening, mamash on top of their lungs. Shemona Esrei suddenly quiet. So halachically, al pi nigla, the reason is you shouldn't disturb the people around you. Shemona Esrei, you need more kavanah, you're quiet so everybody could be mechav. The deeper reason is because screaming represents inspiration but distance. You're excited about it. I am excited about you, and that's why I'm hollering. It's like when I see you from far, I haven't seen you for 2 years, and I see you, hey! And I come to hug you. But when I hug you, when I embrace you, now there's silence. Why is there silence now? Because now you're lost in the relationship. Lost in a positive set. The relationship overtakes you. There is no I that defines the relationship. The very I is the relationship. There was a poet in Israel, her name was Zelda. So she writes after the 67, the 6th day walk, "Shenichnosti liYerushalayim, shachachti et shmi." When I entered Yerushalayim for the first time and I saw the old city, I saw the coast, I forgot my name. I forgot my name. In other words, her name merged into the name of Knesset Yisrael. There was a seamless whole. So what's the doimim of Shemona Esra? The doimim of Yehudah that's deeper than Yosef. It's the doimim that transcends Tzaimeach. There's no self-actualization, not because there's no self-actualization, because it's the deepest form of self-actualization where the self became completely one with the source of the self. And therefore there's nothing conspicuous. There's nothing that stands out. There's nothing that protrudes. I become a complete conduit, a complete shliach, a complete channel for the divine energy. And therefore there's no self-actualization. Why? Not because there's suppression of self, because the self reached that ultimate state where it doesn't have to be conscious of the self in order to be. On the contrary. That's a whole deeper level of daimon. But you can't get to that space if you don't first go through the stage of Yosef being the king. Why? Why not? No, why not? Why can't you get to that higher stage if you don't first go through Yosef? What's the answer? Anybody? Why do you think you can't get to the second Yehudah if you don't go through Yosef?
No self to merge with the truth.
What happened to the self? You mean it was abandoned?
Self, yeah, the self is by the diamond. I'm not coming to the truth with the self.
So what happens?
Self keeps bothering you the whole time. Doesn't let you be.
It's dead.
There's no self.
It was never dealt with. Self was never dealt with. It's still there. It's going to continue to haunt you because you never dealt with it.
Right. So what
It
happened?
could never really be truth.
Huh?
It could never really be truth if it's not.
It's not the cold
If I don't confront the self.
It's left behind. It's left behind. That's what happens. What happens is that it becomes left behind. Why is it left behind? Because it's like the instrument is broken. And that part of the instrument became broken. So you want the eye to become the instrument, but the eye has been broken. And because it's been broken, ultimately it could never become the Negan HaMenagin. Which means, without suppression of self, you won't even be able to achieve it. So now what happens could be something very painful. And that is, I want to open up a new can of worms, but I'll just say this. What can often happen to a person is that when they hear about this Yehudah without Yosef, they're hearing the wrong message. They may be hearing this message. Because you're worthless, therefore all you should be is a channel for the divine. Which means they can never be a channel for the divine, because there's too much pain and anxiety that's disturbing it. So if I hear this is not, you see, this Maamer is not about explanations, it's about experience. If I hear this before I heard Yosef, I will experience it in the wrong way. I will tell myself, like many of us told ourselves when we were 15, we will become batal umevutal to Hashem. Anybody had this epiphany when you were like 16 in yeshiva? You're going to become completely nullified to God. You, the Pnei Yeshua, the Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Akiva Eiger, the Vilna Gaon, and whichever names your Mashgiach floats around, all in the same madrega. Right? We will become completely, the Divrei Yoel? Okay. No problem, it's fine. You know, this class includes all the Gedolim, it's fine. Everyone here has a equally respectable place. So, you want anyone else? You want I should mention anyone else? You want me to mention Rav Kook? Who do you want me to mention?
No, you should.
So, what happens is, I mean well, but I'm hearing the wrong message. Because you're a horrible kid, you need to redeem your horrors by nullifying yourself. So you nullify yourself, but you didn't really nullify yourself. Your whole self has been so crushed and confined that it's completely not there. It's completely trapped. And you're going to come to resent it so badly. It would have been much more honest to go to the first Yehudah. Doimim, Yiratata. Yes, I'm not this. I am who I am. There's a commitment here. That's good. Then you can go to Yosef. And then from Yosef, you can go to Yehudah because now you're not broken. To reach Yehudah, the ultimate Yehudah, you can't be broken. That's why, this is a very deep word from the Apterov, the Oyev Yisrael. Some Sefer says it a little differently. There's a Mishnah, there's a Gemara in Pesachim Lamed Hey. The only matzah on which you could fulfill the mitzvah of matzah is matzah sheyichoyla lavoy lidei chimutz. Gemara learns it out from a pasuk like soichel of chametz shiva seven teichel of matzahs. Only matzah sheyachal lavoy lidei chametz yachal lekayim yotzei by lidei chavetz matzah. Meaning, if I take millet or I take rice and I grind it into flour and I mix it with water, I'll have matzah. It's called millet matzah or rice matzah. It'll never become chametz. Because as Rashi says, Ein ze chametz el sirchen. Pashat, the chemistry of it could rise all day. It's not chametz. It doesn't have the enzyme of chametz. So it's the best matzah in the world. It can't be chametz. You're not yotzeh matzah. Even if you're from the Sfardim and you eat rice, matzah you can't be yotzeh. You can only be yotzeh matzah with flour of grain, spelled wheat, barley, oats, rye, where you mix which can become chametz. Which means we create a disastrous situation because, as you know, the biggest chash chametz is matzah. There's no chash chametz like matzah. But that's the only way you can be mekayem matzah. What's matzah? Matzah is bittul. Deflation. What's chametz? Inflation. The only way you can have matzah is if you can have chametz. If you can't become chametz, you can't become matzah. Why not? Because this is the truth. You can't reach Yehudah if you don't go through Yosef. That's why Yosef is not against Yehudah. Yosef is ultimately a chametz to Yehudah. Because you can't become matzah if you don't go through chametz, because if not, it's not real matzah. What do we mean it's not real matzah? The self has not been sublimated into the oneness. There's no real oneness. It's not that I don't need self-actualization because my self became part of the divine. Rather what happens is, my self was completely left behind, bruised, wounded, and completely detached. So I'm not ready for that unity, and that unity will be fake. It won't be real. In other words, to put it in the language that we spoke about in the previous year, in the whole Chaim Patak, Yeravam ben Nevat discussion, there are people who are subjective because they're blind. There are people who are really subjective because they're much more objective than other people. And when you're really, really, really objective, then you can afford to be really, really, really subjective. If you're not really, really, really objective, you should be afraid of your subjectivity. But people who claim, I will forever be objective because I don't want to be hurt, and I don't want to be distorted, and I don't want to lose the truth, it's not because, really, they want to remain in the truth forever. It's because they don't have the courage to be truly, truly objective. If you really have the courage to be truly, 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 truly objective, without any requirements and without any conditions, then you can trust graduating into subjectivity without losing the self. Why? Because it's not coming from repression, it's coming from Vayihi kenagin hamenagin, from the menagin becoming a nagin, Vatiyalav Ruach Hashem. Which is why, and here's the key, the second to the last key, we'll get to the last key, Yosef will accept Malchus Beis David, and it says that the two kingdoms will be one, but yet David is the king. But if David is the king, why is Yosef not rebelling? Why is Yosef not saying this is not going to work? Mashiach is Beis David, fine. He won, I lost. No. Yecheskel says, Yosef says, I won. Yosef didn't win. David HaMelech won. Is doch the pshat that when David wins, it's not a victory for David, it's a victory for Yosef. How can that be a victory for Yosef when Yosef is screaming self-actualization? The answer is because in the Beis HaMikdash's roof there was all stone, but inside there was tzemeach. Why was there tzemeach inside? Kairush took out the tzemeach, but Shlomo put in the tzemeach because Yosef is also inside David. Why is Yosef inside David? Because real Yehudah doesn't negate self-actualization. It's the ultimate self-actualization. The tzemeach is not lost by the doimim. In fact, the tzemeach is a din in the doimim. So what does this then mean? It means this. It means this. Ultimate self-actualization is self-surrender. Vayikanagan hamanagin. But it also goes the other way. Ultimate self-surrender is also the ultimate self-actualization. Why? To put it in simple words, the same God who wants you to commit to Him wants you to commit to Him. He wants you. So He wants your mind, He wants your heart. If you're not going to be there with your individuality and creativity, it's a problem in Daimim. It's not only a problem in Semeach. That means there's no relationship with you. So the ultimate Semeach is in the Daimim. It's a din in the Daimim. Understand this. The ultimate doimim must include Semeach, because if not, the relationship doesn't have you inside. So that's why inside the doimim, you're going to have the Semeach. But in the Yeshiva Loshen, it's not that the Semeach, the doimim is a din in Semeach, it's that the Semeach is a din in doimim. In the first level, Yiratata, Semeach, doimim is a din in Semeach. In other words, Yosef is the Iker, but you need the daimim. In the higher level, Tzemeach is also there, but the Tzemeach is a din in the daimim. The ultimate relationship also includes Tzemeach. You got to go back to yourself. Not back. You have to include yourself. So ultimate self-expression is self-surrender. Ultimate self-surrender is self-expression, because if the self is one with God, the true I is one with God. So this is where the two meet. Yeravam ben Nevat couldn't understand that, so he went his path, and that's when Malchus Yosef, God went away from Shlomo. He gave it to Yehudah. Yehudah, however, it wasn't working out fully. They weren't ready for that level, so they had to go back to. Now, somebody yesterday called me, I should just say, and told me a little bit of a daring insight. It's completely emes. They said, look what happened with Yehudah and Yosef. Yosef was seen as the black sheep of the family. He was thrown away. But when he had a nisayon with the wife of Potiphar, he won. Yehudah was doimim, the melech, but when he had a nisayon with Tamar, he lost on some level. So this person told me, so you see what happens here, that sometimes it's very interesting. People who scream, doimim, 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 sometimes because they're completely negating self-experience, they can be defeated. And Yosef, who was very loyal to the process of bringing in the self in the relationship with God, actually was morally victorious. I thought that was quite a telling reflection. But finally, I want to make here Maamer the last point. What's the real chiddush of this Maamer? The real chiddush of the Maamer is now something else that we didn't have a chance to address, but I just want to say it. I'm going to try to say it in 2 minutes. I'll try to explain it in terms of the cultural milieu. This Maamer was said by the Alter Rebbe, Parshas Vayichi Tovkuf Samachei, 1805. And 1805, it was probably already the new year, either at the end of 1804, the beginning of 1805, and you have to look at the calendar. And this was 7 years after the passing of the Vilna Gaon, and thus the great conflict between the Misnagdim and the Hasidim, which was primarily the Alter Rebbe became the primary target of that conflict, because of reasons that are beyond this present discussion, somewhat subsided. It didn't disappear, but it somewhat subsided. At least a lot of the tremendous venom and extreme hatred, it subsided, somewhat. But the cultural divide was very profound. One of the key questions was, the Baal Shem Tov used to say, Rachmana liba boy. God wants the heart, emotion, ecstasy, inspiration. He wants the heart. That's what he wants. Passion, heritage. In, so to speak, the Lithuanian world, there was much less focus on that. And often in the world of Hasidus, they looked at that world and they said it's robotic. It's as they still say sometimes. It's institutionalized. It's cold. It's missing feeling. It's missing emotion. There's no experience of God. It's all intellectual, analytical, detached. There's no soulfulness. And this was a very big debate, a very big discussion. It seems that in this Maamer, the Alter Rebbe was actually saying something very profound. And that is, Yehudah is not greater than Yosef in the future. Yehudah is greater than Yosef today. But in order to appreciate Yehudah in the future, you have to go through the process of Yosef being the king. The Yehudah of today is rooted in the Yehudah of tomorrow. It's not two Yehudahs. It's just there's a Yehudah that you see on one level, and then there's Yehudah that you see on another level. What he was arguing was this: institutionalized religion that so many of us have issues with. Yeah. And in many ways the world of Hasidus was trying to heavily challenge organized, institutionalized religion. Somebody told me there was a Chabad guy, he needed a minyan in his Chabad house Friday night. He had 9 people, so he went out of the Chabad house and he stopped somebody in the street and he says, "Are you Jewish?" He says, "Yeah, would you mind coming in to daven with us Friday night?" A secular Jew, he says, "I don't believe in organized religion." Watch this, he says, "Do I look organized?" Watch this. So, this was, what is institutionalized religion? On the other hand, he was saying something very deep here. That for thousands of years, in many ways, you could look at Jews and their practice of Torah and mitzvahs was in a state of daimim. What do I mean of daimim? A certain commitment. This is what we educate our children, a certain commitment, a silent commitment. But what he was saying here is that silent commitment is rooted in the highest daimim. Yirat Tata is rooted in Yirei Allah, which means practically, when you surrender your outer instincts to an inner core value, really on the surface it may seem uninspiring. Why? Because you have to surrender. But you should know that deep down, what is at the core of that experience is ultimate oneness. And that itself gives a tremendous chizuk and inspiration in the process of Yirat Tata. Because Yirat Tata is Yirei Allah. It's rooted in Yirei Allah. It's a manifestation of Yirei Allah. Yeah, it comes out still in a state of separateness. But what allows you really to transcend the outer and go to the inner? What allows you to surrender a certain sense of self for something deeper? It's because of a tremendous oneness that you have. And therefore, don't underestimate that aspect in your life. Have a wonderful day.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.